Hey now, Adam Reaver, fu-tone.com here saying check out Nez Says.
We're live. Today is Thursday, September 3rd. Can you believe it's September 3rd already? It's amazing. And you're tuned into Nez Says, a place where musicians can come together and inspire each other to play more guitar. Thanks for being here with us tonight. We have a great show for you. My name is Dave, and this is my co-host, Ty. How you doing, Ty?
Hey, Dave. Good to see you. Happy Thursday. Always great to be with you on Thursday nights, as always. I'm really excited about tonight's show. Tonight's very special guest. You know, we're so fortunate to have him participate in our live chat each and every week here at Nez Says. And you all know him as Will Van Hansolo. Several months ago, Dave and I met Will when we discovered a series of online videos of him playing the guitar. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that Dave and I both were just blown away. I mean, he is such a soulful player and extremely melodic, incredibly tasteful. He's a young player with an old soul. He has a terrific story, and we are so fortunate that he's agreed to join us tonight. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Will Hansen. Will, it's great to see you.
Hello, Dave, Ty. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get started, let's just say hello to everyone in the chat. David Shar is number one here today. Mike is himself. Ty Price, Chris Bevan, Bert Gittner. I think tonight is your first night with us, so welcome to the show.
He's one of the YouTube guys that comments on my stuff. So, hey, Bert, how you doing?
Very cool, very cool. Dwight Bailey is here.
Hey, Dwight.
Our great moderator, Ben Coombs, is here.
As always, hey, Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Michael Bishop is here. Music Therapy Laz is here. Richard Nesdall, my dad, is here.
All right.
Thomas Santiago, Thunder Falcon is here.
How cool is that name, Thunder Falcon?
It is. I know.
That
it's
is
pretty damn cool. Hugh Caldwell is here. And we'll say hello to the rest as they say hello to us. Mike Neese is here. Hey, Mike. We'll get back to the chat in a little while. Let's talk to Will, shall we?
Right. So, Will, you know, I mean, I described you in the intro as a young player with an old soul. It's obvious from your playing style, your note choices, the phrasing, the articulation. It's obviously that you're rooted in some older music.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did that love begin?
Well, I think it was a mix of having access to great old records that my family and some friends of theirs would have, and also just I'm the type of person that I'm just drawn to older things. I'm drawn to the history of things. It started from a really young age. A lot of my time, if I'm reading books or watching movies, it's documentaries and biographical stuff. So I'm always digging for stuff, and it's always been that way since even a little kid. And with music, it's certainly no exception. I grew up with a lot of great classic rock, and then again, as I was saying earlier, some of the new country stuff from the 80s, Steve Earle and Dwight Yoakam, and then some of the older country music too, Hank Snow and Hank Williams on my mother's side. And then just I would find out about these things, as I was saying to you, Ty, about how I found out about the blues. Like it just came about because I happened to watch the Crossroads movie. And I heard this sort of slide guitar that Robert Johnson's Sunhouse sort of a thing, and something spoke to me about that. And being that young, I was such a sponge that I went down that rabbit hole and never quite came back up. So it's always been about older music for me. There's an element of melody in there. There's an element of musicality. There's an element of just something that speaks to me across the sort of depth of music from, I don't know, the 20s through the 70s or 80s particularly. Always been drawn to that.
No, we had a terrific guest on last week who's an incredible player, and Brandon Paul, and he said, I got a really late start. I didn't start playing until I was 16. You got a very early start, I understand.
Yeah, it's all thanks to my parents and this thing. Oh, in the camera. I joked
That's
that
so
this.
cool.
I joked that this guitar, if Willie Nelson's trigger had a baby, that would be it. It even has a hole in there, and there's stickers. Sorry, I'm not doing the camera quite justice, but
Here, hang
basically,
on a second. Let me help you out with that. Give me 1 second here. Oh, wrong guy. There you go.
there we go. So this is a little Yamaha Guitarlele, I think they call them, and so basically, how I got started playing guitar is that from probably almost the time I was born, my father had a handful of guitars in the house, and I was kind of just drawn to him. He would play, Tom Petty songs or Steve Earle songs or whatever he felt like playing, and I just wanted to be part of that. I was drawn to the sound of the music. So he used to let me kind of fool around with his guitars, and one day there was the unfortunate incident where I was kind of dragging the guitar around and it fell and the headstock went off. So he did what any sane parent would do and went out and spent money to buy a 3-year-old his own guitar, which is this one. And so I've kind of been at it ever since. Another thing I should probably mention as well is at some point my parents were told by somebody, and I'm not sure who, that I had perfect pitch because I used to call out, if the phone would ring or I'd hear things, I could identify what the notes were. So again, the fact that the guitars were floating around, I kind of got a sense of how to tune a guitar and sort of what they sounded like. So by the time I even had this, it was mostly a matter of having to grow into it. Because I was quite small, and even this guitar, like initially I couldn't chord, so I would just tune the guitar to an E chord or an A chord or whatever, and just kind of strum on it until my left hand got big enough to actually form the chords like my father would play.
Oh, that's cool.
So
So at 3 years old, could you fit your 3-year-old hand? Could you wrap your 3-year-old hand around that neck?
No. And I don't know. It's kind of classical style, so the neck, even for its size, might be a little wide. But I absolutely, in fact, this guitar, within being a year, by the time it was a year old, I already had to put different tuners on it because I wore out the first ones from so much, just like an abnormal amount of tuning. But I would take this guitar to the grocery store. I'd play it in the car. I'd take it to the hospital. I'd used to take it to daycare sometimes, I think, even when they'd let me. Sometimes I couldn't take it though, but it was almost like a security blanket in some ways, because it's just, I was so drawn to the sounds that you could create with this thing.
So you're listening to great music, you're playing the guitar. When did you begin to think, hey, did you take some lessons? Did you ever say, hey, maybe I should go out and pursue some knowledge around this?
Yeah. Again, my parents, wonderful with their support. From a young age, they were keen on saying, okay, he's interested in this. Their big thing was never to push it because, I don't come from any kind of line of showbiz or anything. We're pretty quiet, humble people. And so it was just a matter of, okay, he's interested. And there were some other sort of complicated factors. I was sick a lot. So it was a great distraction from being in and out of, having medical issues and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they just, if they could get me lessons with somebody, they would. If they used to buy VHS tapes. I think Keith Wyatt used to do a lot of those for GIT back then. And so they would, instead of buying, a $50 toy from Walmart, it would be the VHS tape, learn to play slide guitar or learn to play rock and roll guitar or kind of whatever was around. And so that just kind of furthered my love of just wanting to do it. I'd see a guitar in somebody's house and I'd want to go over and pick it up and try to make some music with it.
That's cool. What was the first influence you had to get you like where you really knew you wanted to do this for a living? What was like the biggest influence on you, other than your parents, of course?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because it's funny, and thinking back, it's like I was so young that I don't remember when I started playing guitar. It was kind of a thing that just almost happened. I think, again, initially it was I just play it. I'm trying to think if I could put a name to it. I really probably would say Van Halen because I was lucky. Dad had, that was one thing. I didn't have a ton of classic rock per se, but the Van Halen thing was there even from a young age. I remember hearing Mean Street off Fair Warning. We put the needle down on the turntable. And it's like, what is this? How is that a guitar? What is he doing? And so, I'd say it was probably him because he was the cool guitar hero. He was jumping around. He was making his own guitars. He had the wall amps. He was in the big, famous rock and roll band. And for me as a little kid, it's just like, how much cooler does it get than that?
Right.
So it was probably Van Halen, I would say, if I had to pick one from conscious memory.
All hail the king.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good first choice. I think a lot of us here tonight are, we can all check that first choice box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when I first started, I was 5 years old, and my first guitar was an electric guitar, and I thought it was really cool. But then I got an acoustic guitar, and it kind of wasn't really into it. It was a lot harder to play. The action was really high off the fretboard, and it was like, I had to take lessons with that, and because the teacher didn't want me to bring the electric and the amp.
Oh, yeah.
So I kind of fell out of love with it for a little bit, and then when I was 7 again, I was able to pick up the electric, and I didn't stop from there. And then at 11, my first Van Halen show, and I didn't know what a Van Halen was. So, that night on, I was like all for it. So I get that.
The first concert I ever saw actually was Van Halen, and I was about that age. I think I was 12. But it was the 2007 reunion. But, it was the greatest thing to me. It was the original band, with Wolfie, but Ed, Alex, and Dave. And they were, my parents, we got plane tickets and went up to Toronto, and I get to see Van Halen play. And it was like, that was a bucket list thing, even to go to a big concert, because here in Halifax, particularly back then, there just wasn't a whole lot. There's people playing in bars and stuff, but as far as big, shows like that, a band like Van Halen probably would never play here, but they'll play in Toronto or Vancouver or somewhere. So we had to make the trip. But that was my first real concert.
Great concert to be your first, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. It really set a standard that was, and it was just a great thing. My father didn't get to see them in the 80s, so he got to take his son to see them.
That's amazing.
It was a wonderful, bonding experience.
That's great.
That's amazing. You mentioned some admiration for EVH building his own guitars. Have you ever built a guitar?
I've tried. I did make a black and white Frankenstein when I was a kid, but I don't have great patience for these sorts of things, and I'm sort of like, I would get the guitars all torn apart, and then the parts would just be floating around everywhere. And so I'd have all these carcasses of guitars laying around the house. But yeah, I've always admired that sort of DIY ethic, and if I was a little more mechanically inclined, I would probably hack at it. But as it is now, I just get other people to make the guitars, and I play them.
You know anybody that can help him, Dave?
I think so. Just give me a call after this.
There's a community of great builders out there, that's for sure.
Maybe the Guitar Whisperer?
Yeah.
My dad has said something in the chat that he's absolutely right. He said, David, I think your first recital was Stairway to Heaven. And it was. I think it was maybe 9 years old, my first recital. And I had to play Stairway to Heaven. And you know how that's not an easy song to play when you're an adult. And I played it at like 9.
That's pretty cool.
Wow, that is very cool.
Yeah.
I think another memory that kind of comes back to me from that period, and again, sort of cemented things, was watching Back to the Future. And you see Marty McFly up there, and I'll jokingly throw out the line sometimes. People go, who's your favorite guitar player? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, it was Marty McFly for sure. Because you think about it, it's everything from Chuck Berry on up to EVH in that one thing. Goes up through Dick Dale, Pete Townsend, Hendrix, Van Halen. I mean, and those are all names to me that are just total cornerstones. And just, again, doing the duck walk across, I think I went out and got a Chuck Berry record shortly thereafter. And so you talk about playing at your recital. I think in my school days, I would play Johnny B. Good a lot, in the grade 4 or 5 talent show or what have you. But that was always the song because it was, you could kind of do it and, just play play the lick, and you didn't necessarily need to have a band or anything behind you to kind of be cool. And I could, do the duck walk and just kind of have a bit of fun with it. But Chuck Berry, I think seeing that visual represented in Back to the Future was another huge point for me, where it's like, man, that's cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a lesson in rock and roll history.
Absolutely.
That show. And it was all like to the normal person, it's just a movie with Michael J. Fox, and to all of its musicians, that's what we liked the movie for, was all the history of music and rock and roll in it.
Absolutely. And I
mean, it was a good movie to begin with, but I mean, man, just the history of rock and roll in that movie as a second type of storyline.
A great way for me to learn, because again, this wasn't something that I could like talk to my friends at school my own age about. They didn't have any idea about any of these artists. So a lot of it for me was the way I would learn is watching these movies or getting a hold of books about artists, and just learning that way. And then you go and you dig out a record, and all of a sudden you're trying to learn how to play Chuck Berry licks or Jeff Beck licks or Van Halen licks or whatever. And it's just ongoing and hasn't stopped in however many years it's been.
Nice. You mentioned off camera the movie
Crossroads.
Crossroads, yes. Tell us how that's inspired you.
That movie, I kind of say it changed my life on two separate occasions and sent me down two separate paths musically. First time I saw it, I was about 4. I had been playing, but I probably only had this acoustic guitar. I don't think I had an electric guitar yet. And I was really initially drawn to, they feature Robert Johnson a lot in that movie. And I was really drawn to the idea of playing slide guitar and playing blues music. And I that was the introduction to the blues, rather than say, some people will find it via SRV or Hendrix or other newer players. But for me, my introduction to the blues was the original 20s, 30s acoustic stuff. And so I was really drawn to that. I can't speak as to why. I just felt connected to it somehow. And then some years later, after I'd grown up a bit and, had a little more dexterity, I went and rewatched the movie with kind of fresh ears. And I watched that Steve Vai duel sequence, Eugene's Trick Bag. And I walked into my guitar lesson the next week, and I was like, we'd been working on, blues stuff. And I was like, I want to learn this Eugene's Trick Bag. Mm-hmm. And my guitar teacher at the time, a brilliant musician, Shan Arsenault, he just was like, okay. And he taught it to me.
That's great. There's an Eric Clapton record called I Still Do, and I think it came out in 2017.
Right.
You mentioned with the Robert Johnson thing. Well, there's a song in there, and I don't remember the name of the song, and I should be smacked for it, but where there's a video of Eric with just him on a chair with his 0028 and a slide, and he plays a song just the way Robert Johnson would have played it. And man, for the life of me, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the song.
Try and Hurt a Woman Blues, maybe?
That's it. That's it. And boy, wow. I consider myself, in my gigging days, I was an Eric Clapton guy. I did all the Clapton songs, I sang it, and I played the way Clapton did. But for the life of me, I don't think I could ever do anything like that. That is so special because you can't even count it out. It's just all feel. There's no counting. There's no one. It's just, it just is what it is. He plays the guitar to the vocal track, to the vocal. And that is just like, that's incredible music. It's so primitive, but amazing, amazing. And to hear Clapton do it forced me to go back and listen to Robert Johnson again. And I'm like, oh my God, this is it.
And then
I think what's even more, I think what's equally as impressive is so much. I mean, you use the word primitive music, and I would agree. I mean, there is so much culture in those 29 songs that Robert Johnson recorded. The fact that Eric Clapton can pull it off, the way in which he can pull it off. Remember, I mean, Clapton's missing big parts of the catalyst that ignited that creativity that Robert Johnson used to create those pieces, and the fact that Clapton can pull it off to that degree is astonishing to me.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think in my sort of research and stuff over the years, I think Robert and Eric both had enough sort of a tumultuous existence that that music kind of came naturally to them. You know, they had problematic areas of childhood, and they kind of went to the instrument as an escape. For Robert, it was that he didn't want to work in the fields, and I think he was married young and lost his wife and child and stuff. So there was a lot of genuine like heartbreak in his life. So he just rambled and played music, and it kept him out of sort of the lifestyle that so many African Americans were sort of subject to during that period. But he got to work with so many, like he worked with Son House, and he would work with Willie Brown, and he would work with Johnny Shines and David Honeyboy Edwards and all these other names that are also, fantastic musicians. And you start to listen to enough of them, and it just is just such a powerful music, despite you say it's simplicity or in there. It really stems from a beautiful tradition of music that dates back to, centuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when I said it's primitive, this primitive music, it's primitive when you hear it, but it is so complex when you try to play it.
That's exactly right.
Right. Yeah.
It's guttural.
It's just ridiculous. It's great.
There's an honesty to that is really hard to emulate. Right. Mm-hmm. There's such an emotion that comes from the player as they're executing it, as they're creating it. It's really difficult to emulate, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I would agree. And I mean, one thing I found out is you'd see a lot of these guys would grow up, they would have a piece of baling wire or something and a couple bottles nailed to the side of a shack, and they would play slide on one string on a diddy bow or diddly bow. Mm-hmm. And so in these cases, Robert being one of them, it's like, you couldn't even get a guitar. He had to learn how to play this, and then you scrape together the $5 or whatever to go to the store and buy a cheap acoustic guitar. So a lot of these musicians, they made music with what they had, and even if it was, there's a great Son House recording, "Grinning in Your Face," and it's him clapping and singing and no instruments. And I defy anybody to listen to that and say it doesn't move them.
Mm-hmm. Well, Robert Johnson made it big when he was able to get a Gibson LG1 and play that, because for his time that was a very expensive guitar, and you couldn't afford that.
No,
unless you had something going on. So
well, it was not around the time he recorded, they were really willing to invest money in this market. So he could walk out of a session with a few $100 in his pocket, which is big money for 1936.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, you could buy a car with that.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, Terraplane Blues was his big hit about the car, but I don't think he actually owned one.
That's right.
Robert Johnson and Son House probably, those were the catalyst, and then it was a jumping off point for me for a ton of other blues artists like Mississippi Fred McDowell or Skip James or
Slim Harpo,
Earl Hooker. That stuff came later, actually. Funny for me, I only got into Earl Hooker and Slim Harpo and stuff probably through JD, actually, in a lot of ways.
And he means JD Simo.
JD Simo, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love the recreations that he's done of the Slim Harpo stuff.
It's incredible.
It is amazing.
He's one of the best guitar players around today. Blues guitar, well, actually blues, rock, he does everything. The guy does everything.
He's really got this compendium, and I think having chatted, JD and I've sold him a guitar, and we're a bit friendly, but he's kind of, I think, the same as I was, where he grew up and he would watch he just was into the research and into the old school thing. So he would just go down rabbit holes and find out about all this cool stuff. So that's how he, I think, is able to channel, he can channel the Duane Allman thing, but he can also channel the Slim Harpo thing because he spent enough time on both areas and so many others too. The Funkadelic stuff or his, even the stuff with Don Kelly. It's not country in a traditional sense, but it certainly does fit in a beautiful way. His telly picking.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're a professional. I'm sorry, Dave.
No, real quick. I just wanted to say hello to some more people in the chat. Fruitcake Tony is here. My friend J7/8. Hobo Roadie is here. Guitar Man 45. My mom, Beverly Cooper Tours, is here. Hi, Mom. The Chad is here. My buddy, the Chad. We are always working out deals on guitars, the two of us.
Good times.
Yes.
Yeah, it's always fun.
I think that's it. There's 37 people watching us at the moment. Tyler Armstrong is here.
Oh, my buddy Tyler.
Nice.
How you doing,
Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Welcome, Tyler.
Tyler's cool. He works at Killer Vintage in St. Louis. So
Oh, very cool.
He's
Shout out to Killer Vintage.
He's got some really nice guitars too. He and I geek out over old. He's got an old Junior like mine and a Dwight cornet like kind of like Steve Marriott played in Humble Pie and some other stuff. He's awesome.
Real quick, my fiance Desiree's friend Larry Mitchell is here.
Oh wow.
Yes. Speaking of celebrity musicians, hello, Larry.
Hello, Larry.
Hello.
Yeah. So, all right. Back to your question, Ty. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
I mean, you're a professional player.
Yeah.
And you're recording, and you're touring, and there's a lot of you've got a very eclectic playing style. Lots of influences. You mentioned classic rock. We've mentioned country, modern country, and some older country. We just talked about some really old blues. Tell us about the R&B influences.
You know, it's funny. The R&B thing, again, I always end up cycling back the more I think about it. There was a handful of movies I watched, and the R&B thing was the Blues Brothers movie. So getting to see Steve Cropper, Duck Dunn, and Matt Guitar Murphy, and you'd hear, Sam and Dave, or you'd hear Booker T, and it was like that was just part of Ray Charles. So that was that was a bit of a background influence for me. I liked some of that music, but I didn't get into it. I kind of went through my shred guitar phase first. So while I was always into the acoustic blues thing, the sort of electric blues and R&B really only hit more once I joined the band I play with, which in the band for about 4 years, called Roxy and the Underground Soul Sound. And they're it's a 6-piece R&B band. Guitar, bass, drums, vocal, and 2 horns. And but that band has a lot of Motown influence, a lot of bit of a blues thing, but it's more Motown, and then more recent like kind of neo soul stuff as well. So that really inspired me to as the guitarist in that band, I had to really be able to deliver. I couldn't be a rock guy playing in a R&B band because it didn't suit the nature of what they were looking for that gig. So
Have you ever seen the Temptations movie?
I don't believe I have.
You need to find it and watch it. It's incredible. It was a made for HBO type movie.
Okay.
It's long, but it is fantastic. Watch it. The Temptations. It's called The Temptations, and it's amazing. Everyone looks like the original guys. I'm sure they all lip synced. I'm not sure that was them singing, but they all looked the part, and the storyline was amazing.
Very cool.
I watch it every time I see it. I watch it.
I will. I'll put that in my queue of awesome documentaries and things to find. But yeah, the R&B thing, like I say, it kind of came later. It wasn't a huge childhood influence the way that blues was, or like Van Halen or Jeff Beck was to me. But now it's become a part of my lexicon in terms of it's what I do a lot of the time, because right now that's the band I'm playing with mainly, and it calls for that kind of Steve Cropper thing mostly, and so I've really kind of embraced that and turned the gain down and get cleaner amps and use less pedals and just kind of go down that, pretend like it's the 60s again.
Right on.
It's kind of cool.
Now, is that the first band you've played in that featured horns?
No, actually, I initially, when I was circling back to sort of childhood, one thing my parents did do is they hooked me up with a guy called Jeff Goodspeed, who has a satellite project called Los Primos, which was kind of an exchange between here in Canada and Cuba. And he was big on Cuban music, Latin music, and that whole influence. So he would find, reasonably talented musicians who were teenagers, probably maybe a little younger. I think I was the youngest to join. I was 8, and I replaced my friend Sam Jacobs, who was in the band at the time. He was a few years older. We were guitar buddies. and he was moving with his family, so they recommended me to replace him. So I showed up.
So you were 8. You were. I'm sorry. I just wanted.
Yeah, so
You
I was
were 8 years old, and you were going to Cuba to play music.
Yes, actually, I think within the year, I made 2 trips to Cuba with them, and other than that, we just play gigs around Halifax. But
Okay.
that taught me so much. I mean, we were playing original stuff that Jeff had written and playing things like The Chicken or playing things like Softly as a Morning Sunrise, a lot of standards and stuff. But it taught me a lot, even though I didn't read music and really didn't understand the idiomatic elements of jazz. Hearing arranged horns, because there might be 4 or 5 horn players, 2 trumpets and 2 saxophones and maybe a trombone or something. It taught me a lot because I didn't necessarily have the exposure to horn-based music in the way compared to, say, like guitar-based stuff. So I worked with that band. It was more of a teaching mentorship thing, I think, with Jeff and then me being a student there. But I was fortunate to do that for about 4 years, and I met a lot of people that I'm still friends with now that are also, young musicians, play various things.
For those guitar players that are watching tonight that have never played with a horn section before, what would be the first piece of advice you'd give a guitar player when they were walking into that, to that situation for the first time?
Well, in a real practical sense, I would say, as cliche as it is just be willing to really listen, because the more you add to a mix, the more you've got to just find your spot. I mean, it's one thing to be in a power trio or something and you get the big amp and you can take it, you can have width and depth of your sound. But when you're playing in a band with multi-piece horns and keyboards and all that, you have to find your space. And if you try to do the sort of loud guitar abrasive thing when it's not called for, it doesn't really work very well. And I had to learn that over and over and over again, because I showed up, I think I had an Ibanez guitar and I had a Metallica record and I had an Yngwie Malmsteen record, because I was in that phase of life at the time. And I played with too much distortion and too much reverb and all that stuff. Yeah, I still love both of those things way too much. But I had to.
So do we.
I had to learn how to listen. And so that's the big thing I would say. And I mean, for me, often in those settings, I might have gotten hung up on the fact that at that time I didn't know a whole lot of theory and my sheet music reading was not good. It's still not great. Classic guitar player syndrome. I learned when I was so young and used my ears it's like, to me now, I mean, I could read a chord chart or get through things, but I can't put a piece of paper down in front of me. And
well, the old saying, the old joke. How do you get a guitar player to turn down? Put a piece of sheet music in front of them.
Yeah. And I, unfortunately, am probably no different. But my ears have always kind of saved me in that regard, because I hear things maybe differently than a lot of guitar players may hear them. I don't know. That's the best way I can think to put it. Coming back to the fact that even in those times when I was coming at it, the only things I was listening to were, shred records. I still had that background of great melodic music, always, even if I wasn't thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So that was very important, I think, to my development. And also being young and just kind of being a sponge and really into it. It was never forced. I was always just happy to do it.
Cool. Hey, I got some breaking news here. It's no secret that Ty and I are both fans of Nags guitars. Well, Larry Mitchell just sent me a couple pictures of his brand new guitar. I'm not sure if he has it in his house yet, but maybe he does. But I got to show you this guitar. You guys are going to freak out when you see this.
Wow.
Oh, dang.
Larry Mitchell's new Kanai.
Tier 1.
It's a Tier 1. I don't know if they call it a Kanai J because it's a custom Tier 1, but it is a Kanai, and it's got one P90 in it the way a Kanai J is. It is.
Is it carved top?
Yeah, it's carved top. It's another photo of it.
Gorgeous. Congratulations, Larry Mitchell.
That's a beautiful guitar. Happy New Guitar Day whenever it arrives.
Yeah. I'm not sure if he has it, but he may have it.
That's spectacular.
Oh, he's playing it now. He's playing it right now. It's called a D1. Is what's called.
D1.
Yeah.
That's
Congratulations, Larry.
Congrats.
It's gorgeous.
That's awesome.
Use it in good health, buddy.
Always a good day when you get a new guitar. Probably one of the best days in the world, in fact.
Oh yeah, it is. It's always a great day when it's a new guitar day.
Yes.
It's always a great day. Um,
So, well, let me ask you, you mentioned seeking out educational materials at an early age. You're a self-proclaimed researcher, investigator. You're in seek of knowledge. What types of information are you looking for out of guitar education? Like, what? Tell us about the overall pursuit. Is it all about harmony? Is it tell us about your what you're constantly seeking.
I would say harmony is definitely something because, again, I'm coming at things from hearing them. It doesn't really matter necessarily what the instrument is that's creating the harmony. It's more about just hearing things and being drawn to them. So, in sort of as far as when I was younger learning guitar, a lot of my learning was basically through osmosis of being in a room with great players and just being so inspired by whatever they were showing me. I could run home and just work on it. But I do tend to think of things, I'm always maybe hearing a melody in the top voice and then how the chords stack under it. Kind of like how I'm a big fan of the pedal steel, and I love, how somebody like Buddy Emmons, you'll hear a great, or Paul Franklin, a great, beautiful melody that would stand on its own. But when you hear how the chords go between, you get, diminished chords, passing chords and stuff that go between progressions. It's just beautiful. So I'm always kind of, if there's one thing that I maybe think about a lot, it's probably the idea of voice leading on the instrument and like getting to the next chord.
Right.
And how does that all blend together? How can you make, a 3-chord progression kind of interesting melodically? Like if I was playing over a backing track or a song or something, how can I make that interesting? And often it's just, I'll try to imply other chords and give a bit of a lift or a dip or whatever kind of musical feeling I can add to it by how I'm leading the top voice generally.
So, is your use of chromaticism? I mean, you mentioned voice leading. Does your use of chromaticism come from the context of voice leading? I mean, does it originate there for you? Is that how you're incorporating that in your play?
I think so. Interestingly, again, kind of to circle back, I went through a phase a couple years ago. I got huge into Buddy Emmons, the pedal steel player, and I decided I had to learn a bunch of that stuff. Never mind the fact that I've got a 6-string fretted guitar that's tuned one way, but it was very interesting to work out. I just had to use my ears and figure it out, but I got a lot of licks from that ended up having these cool chromatic ideas that didn't sound like what I was hearing other guitar players play. But to answer your point, I would say yes. It does all come down to, I think, what I'm hearing, but the chromaticism, sometimes it's just throwing something out there for a bit of musical humor in some ways. I'm notorious for that in a setting where I'll play something that's almost humorous just as part of the mood. But chromaticism, I just think it's something that it's just another tool that I use. I don't go to it specifically for one thing or another, but it does creep its way into what I play a lot, I think, particularly in a soloistic, like playing lead guitar type of a setting, just because I tend to do a lot of probably pentatonic stuff for the most part, and the chromaticism helps to sort of make that less monotonous as far as to make it more interesting to the listener. Throw in a couple of here and there, and it, like you say, it might... because of the way I lead the voices, you might stumble onto something cool. That's how I try to think of it.
So that's cool. So you're taking all of this knowledge that you have and you're applying it.
Absolutely.
In order to break the rules. I mean, you're really using it to be creative. You're not using it to be a captive to it.
No, and I really struggle with the idea. I've always kind of, like, music and academia are two things that, at least for me and my personality, it's like, even when I was in music school, playing jazz or whatever, it's like I'd run home and listen to my Sex Pistols records. I just like music for what it is I enjoy from it. And it could be the simplest, snottiest music, or it could be the most beautiful, well orchestrated music. And for me, I just I just want to play what I hear in my head. Ultimately, I've got all these notes floating around, and I just want to share an idea. And particular, if I'm not just playing for myself, I want it to be something that maybe it could be a melody somebody could remember, or something that will speak in the way that a great like Jeff Beck or
Oh
or
yeah.
Eddie
Well,
can do.
I can understand that because every video that you put out, every YouTube video, every Facebook video, I watch it, and to me, it's just as good as Tom Bukovac's stuff. I sit there and I'm like, man, great stuff.
Homeschool. There you go. He's
I
got a
I, I I brought this out specifically. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I'll have to tell him you wore his shirt.
Yeah, he is. He's a cool guy. We've talked a little bit here and there, and he's always been very kind to me. Of course, first thing I did when I bought the old Junior is I had to email Tom. I think just like, hey, I got the guitar. He was like, that's awesome. Even
Yeah,
just to have that
that's
quick
cool.
little email is just like, that's so cool that he took that time.
It's very cool when maybe he's not a hero, but when someone that you look up to even says one word of good praise or something that gives you confidence or something that inspires you, something, it's just a great feeling.
Absolutely. It's funny, just digress slightly, but I was thinking about this and I was trying to think, Tom's videos, he's one of the few as far as, the recent crop of like, there's so many YouTubers, there's so much content. And he's one of few that even if it's every 16-minute video, I will always sit and watch them. And I think it's not only the playing and his just no nonsense approach, but it's also just the fact that he's shown, like, it's almost like he's been willing to just cultivate this great community of, like, I've met people now that I never probably would have met, who never would have seen my videos because of Tom. And I've met people now that are good friends of mine because of that. And, for him, it was just, I think it just started as a way to pass the quarantine. But now he's got this community. I think he said today 40,000 subscribers.
Yeah, he has 40,000 subscribers, and good for him.
That's, a meteoric rise to the top, I think, as one viewer on there put it.
And I'll say it, Tom Bukovac, you rock.
Yeah.
I will
Amazing.
You're
concur
a
with
great
that.
person to look up to, bro.
Amazing.
Yeah. But yeah, Tom is and he was an inspiration to me to, like, the video would come out and I'm like, why am I not playing guitar right now? I'd finish watching the video and I'd have to, like, run and grab a guitar and because even if I wasn't playing anything similar to what he was working on, it would just inspire me to want to make a video or share something or just even work on something to be creative. And that that was a big takeaway for me from day one, is just either how can I apply what he's doing that I think is cool, or just, hey, that was really inspiring. I need to play guitar right now.
Right.
Once it was finished. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Will, you mentioned the slide guitar. You mentioned the pedal steel. Do you play dobro?
Not particularly. I don't do well with the whole kind of lap approach to playing. I have an old Hawaiian acoustic over there, and it's set up, and the strings are a mile off. I find even when I've had lap steel guitars, square neck dobros or whatever in my hands, I always just kind of flip them up and sort of fake and play them this way because I'm kind of more comfortable playing, straight guitar, even if I'm playing slide. But I know some people are more comfortable doing it the lap way. But I tried it when I was a little kid, and it ended up being that the way that won out was just to play normally. I wish I could play the pedal steel, but that is such a commitment. I mean, it would take 20 years just to get what I want to hear, even on a basic level, out of it. And my excuse at this point is it's easier to hear those sounds and try to get them out of the guitar because I'm already that much further ahead with the time I've already put in, versus, like, I don't want to all of a sudden get a pedal steel and then find myself, oh, wow, I'm not playing guitar much anymore, because the pedal steel would take up a lot of my time.
Well, my buddy Dennis has this 1930s National Steel dobro. It's gorgeous. It's fantastic.
Beautiful.
If you could find something like that, because it's a round neck, it's not a square neck.
Yeah.
I bet you you'd be, perfect with it.
They are cool. I've never owned one, but I've played not any 30s dobros, but some of the newer ones. The other side of it too is they're quite heavy instruments. So
Yeah.
the guitars I have hanging up in the back, some old harmony guitars and some old acoustics and stuff, and I'll play slide on those. But they're a little more practical in terms of they're still light enough that I can, if I want to play on a strap or something. A dobro, I feel like, you think a Les Paul Custom's heavy, and then you go pick up a dobro, and it's just like keel over. But they are very cool. I would like to get something like that at some point, just for a character instrument. When I stop buying electrics.
A couple of really interesting comments in the chat. Denise says, Will used to fall asleep with his guitar in his arms.
Oh, it's my mother.
Boy, all right. Well,
Hey, Will's mom.
hey, Will's mom, thank you for joining us.
Dave's mom is here too, so you should get together and say hello.
And she's outing you again. She says, when other kids were watching Barney, Will was memorizing guitar magazines and watching Keith Wyatt instructional videos.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. I used to get, again, my father worked in the reference department of the library, so they would buy magazines, but they also had a back catalog. I could go, I think they have Guitar Player back to, the 70s or something, so I could just go in there, and if I was interested in finding a particular article I'd heard about, I could, if I really wanted to, if they would let me in, I could go up there and find it. And so that was a huge, and that's, again, that sort of research element, the idea of going up in the dusty room and you pull out the sheet of magazines and you flip through till you find the one you want and you find out your information. And it's just like, it's this quest that goes on. And I've been like that because of, Dad's generosity and Mom with allowing me to seek out information, even at a young age, and just very much supporting that.
Yeah, Mike Neese says that this show always inspires me to get cracking, even though he has mild arthritis. Mike, that's the reason we show up every week, man. So that is one of the kindest things you could say to any of us. Thank you for saying that.
I have to agree. I mean, not to bring this back to me because I don't want to, but it's very hard to play. And every time I do one of these shows with Ty and a guest, I always want to play my guitar and try harder. Even with the trials and tribulations of not having a thumb to use, I always want to try hard. It inspires me, and I've been playing since I was 5. I just can't thank you guys enough for helping me through all this stuff. Everyone, including everyone in the chat.
Yeah. The community element with shows like this and with Bukovac and that is just, it's staggering to me in the most positive way. It's just people of all walks of life are brought together by these things. And if you've had a bad day, if you've got an injury or whatever, it's not about how well you can play or compared to so-and-so. If you can pick up that instrument and get some music out of it, like, isn't that the greatest thing in the world?
Yeah.
Amen to that.
I want to say thanks to the Chad for the super chat.
Thank you, Chad.
Great show as always, guys. Thank you, Chad. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
I'll be calling you tomorrow. Not for that, but just to talk. So thank you so much, and thanks for catching us live, Chad.
Wicked.
Ben
Chad
says,
doesn't always... Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Ben
Go ahead.
says, I'd love to learn to play pedal steel. Ben, get busy on that pedal steel, man. I know that you can do that.
Yeah, Ben, you play at Telly. Pedal steel shouldn't be that much harder.
I did have a couple guitars with B-benders in them at one point, but not.
Ben will buy a pedal steel next week. There'll be a video on it the week after.
I know.
Ben's a quick study.
That's cool.
Hey, I want to really quick give a shout out to Jody Head Straps. She makes beautiful high-end straps like this one and leather straps. She'll make anything you want pretty much. She makes custom straps. I'll have a couple straps here in the next week or so. Ty will have a strap or two to show. But check out Jody Head Straps for guitar straps, man. She's the best. She's very kind. She's easy to talk to, and she does amazing work. And it's all by her 2 hands. No one else does it.
Really cool stuff. She's got this strap. Dave and I were talking about this. She's got this strap that's amazing. It's got this snake head on it. I kid you not. Mm-hmm. It is an incredible piece of art.
It really is. Good stuff. Also, want to say, and I don't want to sound like a billboard. I apologize for sounding like a billboard. This show is FU Tone approved.
Yes,
How
it
about
is.
that? How about
thank
that?
Thank you,
Thank you, Adam Reaver.
for that
Very
video.
cool.
Yes.
Will, tell us about your favorite guitar right now.
Well, my favorite guitar currently is this was kind of the culmination of a journey for me. I've had just a stupid number of guitars. I used to keep count. I don't anymore. It's, probably 250 guitars over the last 20 odd years.
Wow.
The guitar I really wanted was an original Les Paul Jr. And I've had reissues. I had a custom shop one for a while. I've had copies, and I had a Collings and Heritage and stuff. But when I finally got my hands on a real one, to just try it, I knew it's like I'd wanted one when I was a kid, but it was just seeing people play them, and I was like, what a cool thing this is. It's so simple, so elegant. Again, it's kind of the Van Halen school, but it's a Les Paul. Let
me get you soloed so we can see the whole guitar there.
I will try to do this and stay on the mic. This is a 59 Les Paul Jr. Sorry, hopefully the volume of the mic is not.
Oh, you're good.
Dropping too much.
Beautiful.
59 Jr. in cherry, big, huge neck. Mostly all original. I think it's got a Mojo Axe bridge on it there. You can see, I think somebody played it in like a punk band or something because it's got all these cool marks on it. But this is just a spectacular guitar. Like I say, I've had the reissues, but when my friend lent me this guitar a while back, and I had to give it back after a couple days, and I don't think I slept for a couple weeks after. And we were doing some trading, and he finally decided I think it was time to let it go. So I pulled the trigger on it, and it was not an easy decision because they're not cheap, but I think it was a worthwhile thing. And I really, to be honest, I've got a lot of great guitars over there, but this is the one. I really haven't used any others for probably about a month that I've had this, except for a bass or a baritone or something for tracking. But this is my favorite currently, the 59 Junior, and this is a keeper. I'm so thrilled with this.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah,
also, use it in good health. That's a gorgeous guitar.
You can see it's cool where it's like, you can see where it was red on the back here, and then it's all faded to this kind of worn mahogany just from the UV dyes fading out on them as they did back then. And lots of just honest wear. I've probably put some marks on it myself. That was the one catalyst too. I was like, if I buy a really clean one, I'm going to be afraid to play it. And that was it too. I said, I want one that's a good guitar, but I need to be able to use it, because otherwise there's no point in having it sit on the wall or in a case and not be used.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's why I don't mind the marked up guitars myself.
No.
Especially when they're old.
And, from being on the road and in the studio and stuff, and it's like, things happen. Guitars will fall. They'll get scratched. People mean well, and something will happen, and it'll get knocked over. And it's just how it goes. You can't worry too much. I've had a lot of really fancy guitars, and I used to just freak out over every little scratch and ding. And I realized that ultimately I just ended up going back to playing guitars that I could play without fear of, devaluing them, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
But yeah, that's the favorite currently. And then we can talk guitars. I've got a bunch.
Yeah, let's talk guitars.
I grabbed a few.
Beverly, thank you for those kind words. That's very nice for you to say.
Yeah.
I'll write you a check later, Mom. Good stuff. Thank you very much.
That being said, that's a guitar I bought recently, and it's very quickly currently is a number one. But if I could only have one guitar outside of the one that'll go on the ground with me, was the little Yamaha that I pointed out. But that's obviously not a very practical road instrument. There's no pickup in it, and the scale length is very small. This has been my number one guitar for probably, I've had this about 3 years. This is called a Danocaster. They're made in Nashville. Dan Strain has become a great friend. He and the team that that do these guitars, and they're just great Fender style. This one being like a Telecaster, it's ash body, really, really light. The whole guitar is only like under 6.5 pounds. Soft V neck, maple neck with kind of, I don't know how he finishes the necks, but I imagine it might be an oil finish or something with a French polish on it. All one-piece maple with the soft V, which is very comfortable because I play a lot of chords that way, Hendrix style, and it's just a very comfortable grip. These pickups I think are called Buds pickups, B-U-D-Z, and they're made to Dan's specs. They're like a 50s Telly pickup set. And this thing, I've used this for every kind of gig, from blues to even some slightly heavier rock. It cleans up beautifully, plays well with gain. It has a fat, almost Les Paul kind of a thing, but you can turn it down, and it's really a one-stop shop for me and how I play. You can see it's got a lot of greening on it, because that was me learning all those Buddy Emmons licks, and the whole guitar is just oxidized. You can see there's where my palm would go. And
so was it gold? Was it painted gold at one time?
It was. Yeah, it was. I don't think the back might. You can kind of see what the original color is on the back. It didn't go as bad, but yeah, it was gold. Some people look at this and ask me, "Oh, is that finish over finish?" And it's like, no, that's just me using.
That's great.
This has got thousands of hours on it. I had Dan make this. I used to have a guitar he had made. It was an Esquire, looked kind of like the one Jeff Beck had on the cover of the Rave Up record, and I wanted a spare. So I had him make this, and it showed up, and it was in tune, and it was perfect. I think I took it to a gig right away. The only thing I learned, I wanted a gold one, but I have, Dan calls me Edward Acid Hands, and this guitar is a showcase of that. My sweat kind of ate through the gold paint, but wow. I think it's kind of endearing because there's no guitar out there that looks like this.
That's very cool.
That's amazing. Any guitar I want relic, I'm going to send to you.
Yeah, just give it to me for a year, especially if it's painted some metallic color. Yeah, this is my favorite. Like I say, if I could only have one. What else I got?
Cool. Hugh Caldwell, thank you very much. Fruitcake Tony says Don Barnes had a 38 special, played one exactly like that in the early 80s. He's referencing your 59.
The Junior.
Yeah. Well, so many people played those that, like Ronnie Montrose had a cherry one he played Bad Motor Scooter on. And a lot of the punk guys I liked in the 70s, Johnny Thunders and Mick Jones from The Clash and different people, they would play Juniors. Leslie West played a Junior.
Of course, yeah.
I think Chris Spedding used to play SG Juniors. And there's just something so spectacular about those guitars. The single pickup thing, I rarely use a neck pickup on a Gibson guitar unless it's really good. So it just became easier to say, okay, I'll just get the single pickup one. Because I think there's a certain resonance. I don't know. Obviously it's a spirited debate, but to me, I hear a difference between, if compared to that or maybe like a Les Paul Special with the two pickups.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But this is the other gold guitar, and I grabbed this because Ty, I see you've got a beautiful sister to this.
Thank you.
This is this is an R7. This is a guitar I bought in college. I was looking for a really good Les Paul. I wanted one that was light but not chambered. So this is maybe 8 pounds, a little over 8, but it's solid. Nice back on it. It's turned a little bit green, but not nearly to the degree that the other guitar has.
Does that have any weather checking in it?
Not really. No, there's like it's gone green kind of where the binding is, but there's no checking anywhere in it other than just maybe some scratches and stuff. It was probably, I got it toward the end of my time at college, I think, but it was a main guitar. I used it a lot, and I would play it outdoors and stuff, which I think the humidity is what does the graining thing. The cool thing now, Ty, does yours have a really big neck on it, that guitar?
Mine has a really small neck compared to most R7s, or this one does. I've got another one in the other room that does have a big neck on it, but that one in particular, its neck is smaller than every other R7 I've ever
Wow,
held.
that's the exact same with this. This is not a huge bass. This is like what you might call, I don't know, V260 neck. Gibson would maybe call it. It's like it's round, but it's not real flat. But it's certainly smaller than the 59 Junior's neck even.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I discovered about that guitar early. Is just, we were talking last week with Rick about Charvel necks, and we all agreed that the neck sometimes really is the first deciding factor on a guitar. That's what did it for that. Will, they're unusual, right? When you get an R7 and it's not one of these giant necks.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I wanted a historic Les Paul. I'd had a bunch of standards and traditionals and stuff. This is just the first one that came up for sale. Around here, there's not many of them. I think the story is this guitar came out of a place called Mark's Guitar Loft. I can't remember if they're in New Hampshire maybe, but they kind of specialize in like nice historic stuff. And he'll get, I don't know if he gets them from Gibson or just finds them used and then resells them. But I think the story was that's where this guitar came from. So it's.
Did you put the double creams in it?
I did, yeah. They were. I think when I got the guitar, it had 57 classics with chrome covers, which I thought was a little strange. And then I had wolf tones in it for a long time.
Good pickups. Yeah.
Was it the Dr. Vintage and Marshall head? Does that sound right? That set, and those had really aged covers. And then I decided I wanted double creams, so I had a friend of mine around here just make me these custom kind of. I told him I was just like telly on steroids kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And the double cream, I've always loved that sort of look, and cap it off with the reflector knobs, and it's like a 50s Les Paul 57 that was modified in 77.
Yeah, I started to say it's got a real 70s vibe to it. It's really cool. But those knobs are my favorite knobs on Les Pauls. I mean, I have them on my Les Pauls. I love them.
Yeah.
What is it about those knobs that you like, Ty?
I can get it quickly. So I'm on the volume. Because of the raise, I can get it in here quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment as well. On most of the Les Pauls that I gigged with, I would always put reflectors on them. And I kind of liked it too. It was just a little subtle thing because a lot of the Les Pauls have, like my Junior, where it's the bell style or top hat. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They're so common. It's just like a little thing you can do. Doesn't, like, even I can change the knobs on a guitar. So I put those on there. And this has a Faber bridge and tailpiece on there as well. So they lock.
Oh, very nice. Yeah.
I wore out the original bridge.
Well, the cool thing about your guitar and Ty's guitar, I'll digress a little bit, is that thinner neck. And many people may or may not know the historic collection, the newer Gibsons in general, have much, much bigger necks than their grandparents from the 50s had. So say you had a burst, just a 59, say you have a reissue of a burst. 9 times out of 10, the same color burst, but the one that was made in 59 has a much smaller neck on it than the one you have that was just made. Just recently, Gibson has started making more true to 50s necks.
Yeah.
Up until about, I want to say 2014, 2015, up until then, they were humongous. Mm-hmm. The guitar necks would be humongous, almost unplayable, for me at least. Because I truly believe that there is a such thing as the neck is too big. Big necks are great; they make the guitar sound really good. But there's a time when it's just too big.
And it's so, like, I think, if you get into reading a lot of gear forums and stuff, as I did when I was a teenager, it's like everybody has their opinion, and it's like certain things become almost gospel, but it's all still subjective. Some people really need to have a thinner neck because maybe, again, they've got particular issues with their hands that they need a particularly thick or particularly thin neck for their comfort so they can play at their best.
I agree.
What year is yours, Ty? Your R7?
That was a 94, and when I say that it's a smaller neck, I don't mean to suggest that it's like 60 slim small. It's
No, but it's
just
just
small.
not what you would expect for if you walk into
An
a store
R7.
right now and bought an R7, you would think
Right.
that it's this big.
Right.
But yeah, this in comparison, so I have this and I have the Junior and I have the 335, which we'll get to. This is the smallest of the three, and I think the Junior might be the largest, but the 335 is similar, but it's more of a D-shaped neck. These are other two. The Les Pauls are more round.
Now this one that we may or may not know is there's no shoulders on this guitar. It almost
Right.
comes to a V, and this is a very old guitar. So yeah, it's the newer ones are more like this, and the fact that you both have gold tops that have the slimmer necks, kind of like this,
Yeah.
is very cool. Those are both keepers.
I
Oh,
would
yeah.
say this was and it's funny because this is a guitar. Unfortunately, I don't play nearly enough, but any time I've had even an inkling of saying I could maybe sell this, because in fact, when I bought the Junior, I was selling guitars. I sold off a lot of guitars to make that happen, but there were certain ones where it's like even if I don't play it even that often, it's like I have to keep this just because this guitar was with me through college and on a lot of gigs, and you got to have if you get a good Les Paul, you got to hang on to it. I've made the mistake of buying some great ones and I sold them. So I said, well, I'm keeping this one. This was sort of the third keeper. I had lots in between that I knew I wasn't going to keep, but
Yeah.
this was the one where I was like, it was achieving a goal. I wanted a historic Les Paul, and this is the one I saved up for and managed to get.
It's cool, man.
Very cool.
nice.
Congratulations, that's a great guitar.
Yeah, so I think it's a 2010, so it's a little newer, but it's not as new as the ones you're mentioning, Dave, that have the more accurate neck specs, I think. You don't see too many of them where I am. Like they'll get some custom shop guitars, but I haven't been able to play tons and tons of them, just because they might get one custom shop Les Paul in at the store, and that's
Yeah,
kind of-
you know, I think the U.S. and England may be the two best places to get, historic collection.
yeah, or
Gibsons.
maybe Japan or something with the
Japan
Yamaha
as well. Yep.
Here, I'm gonna grab the 335, I think.
Brian Spalding, good to see you. Glad you're here. He says Les Pauls. That's what I play 99% of the time. Tell us what your favorite Les Paul is, Brian.
Anyway, while we wait for that answer, tell us about that 335. That's gorgeous.
So this is a Rusty Anderson 335, based on loosely anyway, I guess his 59 dot neck that he plays. It is
Gorgeous.
a 2014, I think. A lot of nice. It's hard to get the figure to show up on this computer light, but it does have some lovely curl. Kind of see on that lower cutaway, particularly, it's really really vibrant. The back
gorgeous.
is nice. Back is nice. Mahogany neck. This has got that 59 neck, but it's a very shouldered, like a D taper neck. This has the long pick guard, which I really like. The long pick guard there, which that little aesthetic touch, I just think is so cool for the dot neck ones. When you see that, it's like, oh, cool. That is either an old one or a really nice reissue, or maybe somebody just put the guard on there, but it's nice. These are custom buckers, I think, in this, of Alco 5 and a 2. This guitar taught me a lot about, it doesn't really play well with high gain sounds to me. And I initially got it thinking I was going to change the pickups. But when I learned about, I was using it a lot more R&B blues band type thing, where you back the gain down and maybe play through a louder amp with a little less preamp gain. This guitar really shines for that. So this guitar saw a lot of use. I think that gig I'd mentioned where we opened for Shaka Khan, this was the guitar I was using. And it's a great stage guitar. It looks really good. And this comes back to when I was a kid and seeing, Chuck Berry and stuff, the idea of or B.B. King, the big Gibson. But I've always just had a thing for blonde Gibson ES guitars. So that's why I had to get this. It cost me 2 Gretches and it was so worth it.
That's not a bad deal at all.
No, I mean,
bad.
maybe on paper, like if I had been patient, but I wanted this, and they didn't make many of the Rusty Andersons. I think maybe 250 or 300 of them. So it was a matter of finding one used in Canada. So that's this one came up, and I um, I was very lucky. This guitar, shortly after I got it, it took a bit of a fall. You might be able to see there's a little ding on it, but it took a fall and fell down. But the only damage was this one ding, and it chipped a little bit of the headstock. No broken neck.
No breaks.
So that's funny because I've had so many Gibson guitars that have taken a fall. If it falls and doesn't break, I keep it. That's like an omen. Every Gibson guitar I've had, other than the Junior, knock wood, unfortunate things have happened, and they've the strap is let go or whatever. But they've got only minor cosmetic damage. I did knock over a Les Paul once that unfortunately I just went for it and it cracked the headstock. So that was not a good day. But thankfully that wasn't a Les Paul that I loved the way I do these ones. So it was easy enough.
I'll tell you guys a little story talking about headstock breaks. So I guess I was in my late 30s, maybe early 40s. And I went to a local store here and got a Tom Murphy aged 57 gold top that was ridiculous with the Brazilian fretboard.
Nice.
Brazilian rosewood. And I played it for a couple days, and I was so in love with it that I took it to my weekend gig. And I put it in my truck. I had a SUV at the time. Put it in its case in the truck. And then I opened the back of the hatchback, and the guitar fell out and the headstock broke. Not only was I devastated, if you ever saw a grown man cry, that was the day you were going to see a grown man cry. You saw I was tears coming out of my eyes. So I was looking at a couple guitars when I bought that guitar, and I told my mom about it. I was living at home at the time for a minute. Maybe I wasn't living at home. Maybe I was living here. I don't remember. It's on this property. My mom lives across the driveway, so I can't remember. So I was out late. I don't know if I was doing a gig or if I was hanging out with some buddies. I don't remember. I came home late. And, I was, for some reason, I was at my mom's house. I don't remember. But anyway, I came home late and the Gibson case was laying on my bed. And I thought to myself, well, that's a shitty thing. Why would anyone leave this case on my bed to remind me of my broken guitar? And my mom said, open the case. So I thought to myself, all right. I opened the case, and it was a 59, historic 59 burst with a Brazilian rosewood board. And it was the other guitar that I looked at that was more expensive than the gold top. And I said to my mom, how'd you do this? What the hell did you do? Wow. Well, I felt so bad that I saw that you broke your guitar, and we know where you got that one. So her and her husband at the time went to that store during that day and said, listen, is there any other guitars that Dave was looking at? Because he broke that guitar. It fell and broke. And my friend Gary, who owned that store, showed him that guitar, and they bought it for me, and that was it. It was amazing.
That's incredible.
It was the most amazing thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, what a great story.
Very Beautiful. Cool mom, that is.
No doubt.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brian says I asked him what his favorite Les Paul was. It's an 84 Les Paul with a Jason Becker pickup in the bridge. DiMarzio super in the neck, wine color, and he's got it sanded to raw wood on the back of the neck. Man, that sounds pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It certainly does.
Becker was an early influence of mine too, actually. Funny enough, Dad got a hold of Perspective, which was the album he put out in '95 or '6. It was in like a clearance bin at HMV, the record store, and he just happened to pick it up. He would do that sometimes. He'd just see an album that's like it was, $10, it's $1. So he brought it home, and I played that record endlessly because there's so much diversity on it. He was doing all the compositional stuff. He did the choral piece with Bobby McFerrin and Voikestra, and then there was some other stuff that he had played guitar on. And I think Michael Lee Firkins played on that record too. But yeah, it's just funny. Becker was, I don't really listen to a lot of that stuff now, but he's somebody who's very close to my heart just because, again, his story and the great music that he's given us, and just the fact that he's still here now.
Yeah.
It's like 1989, and here we are, 2020, and he's still
Yeah,
here.
amazing guitar player. I mean, just amazing guitar player. Those records that he made still hold up. They're still extremely creative. The technicality behind the playing is just mind blowing, and what a great human being.
It's the whole package.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know when he mentioned that Les Paul, Brian has sounds like, is it a custom or like a standard or something? What did he say? I really like Les Paul customs too, but I've never managed to hang on to one.
He didn't say. I have two Les Paul customs. I get weak in the knees for black Les Paul customs.
I did, one of the guitars I sold was a 74 custom, but
What color was it?
It was
Was
a
it
black
white?
one. It
Oh,
was
was
a
it
black
black?
one, and I had the white surrounds on it. It looked like the guitar. Steve Marriott had one in Humble Pie, but also on the back cover, Live and Dangerous, Brian Robertson had the black Les Paul with the open face pickups and the white hardware or cream.
Yeah, man.
So I had that. That guitar though was like 11 or 12 pounds, and the neck, I think it had a neck break and repaired. The neck made an Ibanez seem like a Gibson 50s. It was very, like, I was amazed the truss rod didn't poke through the back of it. But it was heavy, and it was a great sounding one, but I didn't play it because it was just not comfortable, and it needed frets. And I said, well, I blinked, and I was like, man, I haven't played this guitar in like 6 months. So it looked great sitting there, but I ended up letting it go. But I do get weak in the knees still for Les Paul customs, black ones or white ones, or even like a nice, even some of the Tobacco Burst ones are nice too. A friend of mine has a 79 that's really nice.
Yeah, those are cool. Yeah, I saw when I saw there was it's funny you mentioned Lizzie. So I saw a Thin Lizzy concert. It had to have been on MTV at the time. One of these late type things, early '80s. They had done a concert for supporting the Thunder and Lightning record.
Okay.
Was
that Sykes era?
That was the Sykes record with them. And I was like, who is that? And that is the coolest guitar I've seen, because he at the time, he had already dressed the Les Paul with the mirrored
stuff to match Phil's bass.
And I just thought it was the coolest thing. And then, of course, the player himself. I mean,
Sykes, jeez.
Yeah, forget it.
I didn't have access to the Blue Murder record when I was a kid. I only heard it maybe when I was a teenager or something, but you just listen to that and I'm like, this guy can play this way, and he's got the Coverdale killer voice, and he picks great musicians, and his tones were just impeccable. It was a lot of that kind of 80s reintroduction to the Les Paul that I went from playing Super Strats, and then the first good guitar I bought myself was a Les Paul, because I kind of went from playing almost power metal stuff to more like, I don't know, GNR, Lizzie, glammy kind of stuff. And the guitar for that was a Les Paul. But they'll always have a soft spot in my heart, and particularly those customs, because whether it was Sykes, whether it was Doug Aldrich, whether it was Randy, whether it was Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, or anybody, like, they had the Les Paul custom. It's just so cool. I would love, maybe someday I'll get a white one. Those are cool, but you pay a premium, I think, to get a 70s white one, because everybody is a fan of does the Randy thing.
So, Will, you know the Edge from U2. I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
So he has a white Les Paul custom with Filtertrons in it.
That's cool.
That thing sounds amazing.
I bet. He's got some cool 70s Gibsons. I mean, he was kind of the guy that put those reissue Explorers on the map.
Oh, man.
And the custom, and I think even that black big headstock Strat, he was just buying these guitars and making some incredible soundscapes and sculptures with them.
Yeah.
But Les Paul with Filtertrons, I love the idea. Never gotten to try one, but I think it would be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Have you, Dave? You ever had an Explorer?
Yes. In fact, I had, and my buddy has it now. I have a split headstock Carina. I had a split headstock Carina Explorer made by Max.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah. I sold it
many of those.
I sold it to my buddy for a little money, and now it's worth
a lot.
40, 50 grand.
Those are
The one that
cool.
got away. Would you say that's the one that got away?
No, I would not say that's the one that got away. I would say the two that got away. I had a 1960 Sunburst Strat that was the best Strat I've ever played in my life, and everyone that ever played it said the same thing. When I bought it, I had a chance to buy that one or a super duper clean 1960, and that one was beat. It didn't have frets on it, and the obvious choice was the one that was beat up because it just had a vibe to it, and it had this life in it. It had life in it. And once I refretted it with 6120 frets from my friend Larry Fitzgerald, who's the most amazing repair luthier guy that I know.
And that says a lot.
Yeah. And it was the most amazing guitar. And the other guitar would be a 1955 wraparound tailpiece gold top Les Paul.
Wow.
I bought
P90s?
that.
Great choices.
Two P90s. I bought that guitar from Guitar Center for $2,600.
How much?
$2,600.
That's like historic.
An old one. No, not a historic though, but it was a
No,
real
I
one.
mean that price is what you would pay for.
There was not a lot of gold left on it, but the guitar itself was ridiculous. And without having medical insurance at the time, and you're in the hospital, you got to sell some stuff to pay for your medical, or else you ain't getting out of the hospital. So you can't leave unless you pay your bill.
Yeah, I had a chance to play a 53 gold top that was pretty beat a number of years ago, and it wasn't well taken care of in terms of the guitar almost had what I would call a horizontal scallop just from somebody having 12s on it for 50 years and never cutting their nails. The inlays were proud of the board, and it would you have to hold it in one position, otherwise it had a bad ground buzz and they wouldn't look at it.
Oh,
but
wow.
that neck was incredible.
Yeah.
Did
Kind
it have
of
a stop
similar-
tail on it, or did it have the
it had the-
trapeze?
It was a wraparound tailpiece like the Junior. I love those wraparound tailpieces.
Me too.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah.
Remember, was it maybe even 10 years ago, Gibson did those Hot Mod 55 Les Pauls that were like Les Pauls that had been modified. But they made like a custom with a wrap tail, or they made like a Sunburst one with humbuckers, but it was a wrap tail. I think Steve Stevens might have played a gold top one of those for a while.
Oh yeah.
He likes the wraparound tailpiece.
I agree with. He said in maybe a rig rundown or something, he just likes how direct they are, and that was the first time I'd ever heard anybody say it in a way that like summed it up for me, because that's what I hear too. I almost wish they all had that feature.
Yeah, I saw the same rig rundown that you just referenced. Is that not the best rig rundown that's ever happened? I mean,
absolutely.
It's so cool.
It is. It is amazing. He knows everything about his gear, and everything about his gear for him to get the perfect tone for what he's doing. I mean, it was the best rig rundown I've ever seen.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've definitely watched that a few times. I didn't have a lot of Billy Idol's early stuff, but around 2004, he put out a record, I think Devil's Playground, which Dad brought home, and we listened to that a ton. There's not a lot of shreddy guitar in it, but there's like him with a Les Paul and a Marshall doing the kind of 70s rock thing. It's not real solo-y, but great riffs, monster
Nothing wrong with
tones.
that.
And but that I think was my exposure to Steve Stevens early on, and then we got the Memory Crash album.
That Memory Crash record is
awesome. I remember when I was on my way, I found a guy who was selling an amp called a Splon Quick Rod, and I saved up all my money to buy this used Splon amp. And on the way there, I can remember listening to the Memory Crash record, and then I went there to check out the amp, and the guy had a bunch of really cool gear and sold me that, and I had to get rid of that amp. It was way too loud. I think my band broke up a week after I bought it, and then so I had to let it go. But I
think those are great sounding amps. I've
had a couple. They're awesome. I think the first decent amp I had was a Boogie, and then I went to the kind of the Marshall-y thing, and then I just tried a bunch of stuff, and then I was Axe Effects for a while, and now I'm mostly playing old Fenders.
Which Boogie did you have?
I had a Mark III.
Yeah, very nice.
I locked into that, and it was being where we are, it's like it's luck of the draw with used gear. It's kind of whatever's for sale. And I was really into that kind of power metal, really smooth, sort of liquidy tone, and I thought a Boogie would be a good choice. But that amp, you couldn't dial it in the 3 channels because it was all those pull controls, and it was always a compromise. But I found a tone that really worked for me with that amp. And then as we do, I got tired of it. I decided I wanted something more martially. That Splon came up for sale, and I just about had a fit because I'd read about them on a forum, and I just sold everything I had, spare guitars, whatever, old Matchbox cars, and it's just like, I'm going to get this amp. And then,
I've played a lot of boogies, and
Yeah.
I've played boogies for a long time. I still have some boogies.
Yeah.
But I always preferred the Mark side of their
Yeah.
product.
That's I've had a few. I borrowed a rectifier. Now the shame of it is, I bought a Mark V at one point around the time they came out. I owned it for 8 months, and it was in the shop more than half that time. It's just not a well. That something was wrong with that one. But what was cool was that I got a chance to the store, because it was warranty. They would just give me another amp, and so I think I tried a rectifier. I got a chance to try one of those out. I had a Marshall Vintage Modern for a while, and then maybe some other stuff. But it just allowed me to. I couldn't buy more than one amp, but I got to try these other cool things. But yeah, that Mark series tone, and it's a shame. If the Mark V had worked out, I probably would still have it because it could do every kind of sound. But it just things were constantly going wrong. It would blow up at gigs, every other gig, and I'm just going, I can't.
I still have a Mark V. I still have a Series 1.
Oh, cool.
So it's an early one. I mean,
they are incredible sounding amps.
Yeah, so it's an early Series 1. I mean, Mesa fans waited for that amp for a long time.
Yeah.
And, when it came out, I was pretty excited about getting it.
I remember when they came out, reading on the forums, and I was just waiting for the local music store to get one in so I could just try it. It was more money than I could spend on an amp, but I remember they got a combo in, and I got to go try that, and it was just like, wow, like all these features in the amp. It was amazing. It was like self-contained almost.
Yeah, like 3 channels and 9 modes, and it was
switchable power and reverb per channel, and
it was crazy,
cool.
Man. I mean, when that came out, nothing had ever been that sophisticated before, and then and it had MIDI capability too, so you could kind of tie it in. At the same time, that's when all of us, we were using ground controls, and and you could tie that amp in to any rig, pretty easily.
So that I had that amp for a while, and then I sold that, and I bought a Bogner Ecstasy, which was awesome. The record that I put out a number of years ago, that was the amp I used on that album. But it again, and then I think I had that for a couple years, and it was an amazing amp. But going off to music college and stuff, I was like, I can't 120 watt tube head. And particularly I wasn't playing a lot of that kind of heavier rock at the time for school. It was like, and that's why I think I went Axe-Fx for a while. I thought that would be a good way to go, but it only ever ended up being useful to me in a recording context. I never did get the live thing figured out with the Axe-Fx the way I would have hoped.
Talk to Larry Mitchell about that if you still have the Axe-Fx. He'll tell you about it.
I sold that to buy. That was one of those things. I think I sold it because I was hot after a guitar or something, and I think by then maybe I had some amps. There's some people that get killer sounds out of the digital stuff, and probably even more so now than, like, I had an Axe-Fx probably 5 or 6 years ago, and even in that time, I mean, I think they've come a long way just in general with all these companies popping up with full range systems and just finding ways to really get the feel. Because I think that was the big thing I took away as it being a difference, was the feel compared to playing through like a JCM800 or a Loud Fender or something. It's not better or worse, it's just different.
The thing that Larry said when he was with Dave and I on the show that made an awful lot of sense to me is he talked about, regardless of where he went in the world, that he was completely consistent. And I think at the time he was using the AX8, right, Dave?
Yeah.
And he was consistent. And that, that takes a lot of worry, out of any situation, that you're going to be able to sound like you, working with familiar gear, no matter where you go, and you're not relying on rental backline, and keeping your fingers crossed that somebody paid attention and you're getting the right.
Here's the kicker with Larry though. He didn't always take his own AX8 with him. He'd have someone, say he's in Germany, someone over there would have an AX8, and Larry would bring his laptop with him and just program his sounds into that AX8.
That's cool.
He didn't have to carry an amp with him or anything, and that night he would have his sounds. His whole rig would be right there.
That's incredible to think about. I mean, the ease of use. I mean, we talk about all these guys, Sykes and that, and you think about everybody had a Bradshaw rig, and you had to have 4 roadies just to move it around, and God forbid if you were touring somewhere, internationally. But now, the tools are in place that you can travel with such a small amount of stuff, and depending on the nature of how many tones you need, you can just travel lightly, and there are things in place, as Larry's rig is, where he can just show up and not even have his piece of gear, but just the sounds that are within, and he'll just, I'm going to load up these presets and play my show.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it takes, a few minutes.
Will, have you encountered, is there this silent stage thing going on where you are, where everybody's trying to quiet the stage volume and everything?
Well, yes, although playing in the R&B band, I mostly am using Fender amps, kind of clean. I usually have an EP booster on or something, just because I like a bit of. There's that side of me that I'm still a rock and roller at heart, so I want a sound with a bit of punch. It's funny, I get told to turn down sometimes, but more often than not, I get told to turn up, because I'm trying to be considerate of, again, like, listening, and not. Because sometimes it's not volume, it's just frequency range, or gain levels. So the silent stage thing, for the kinds of gigs I do, it hasn't really happened. I think if I was I've had friends that, work on cruise ships and stuff like that, and that's very, you plug into a pod or an Axe-Fx or whatever they may even have, or like a Line 6HX or something. So I think it is common, but I haven't really seen it. My solution sometimes is to just take a smaller amp, like a Fender Champ or a Princeton or something, as opposed to, taking out a Deluxe or a Concert or a Twin. Just about matching the amp to the room, I find, and they kind of have a sweet spot where I'd like to run them, but I almost never get to turn them up as loud as I would prefer. Mm-hmm. JD's able to run his old Fenders and Ampegs pretty loud. Comparatively, I probably have to run mine at about half where he would. I'd love to run them at about 6.5. That's about the sweet spot for a good blackface or silverface Fender, but generally it ends up being about 3 with the EP booster on.
It's funny that you mentioned cruise ships. Back in the 90s, like 94, 95, 96, around there, my wedding band would do a cruise ship every February, and we were lucky enough where they would crane in our whole rig, like 26 road cases, and I was able to play through a Fender Deluxe Reverb, and through our PA, it was all inclusive, and we would play in different rooms every night. We'd be out for a week or 2 weeks, and they wouldn't have us sit in one room. We'd be in a big room one night. The next afternoon, we'd be in a small room, and then that same night, we'd be in another big room. So we'd have to break down and set up, and break down and set up, and roll all of our cases to all these rooms in the ship. But it was amazing to be able to play through my own amplifier with my guitar and my pedal board. It was just a great thing.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it. The nature of a lot of the bar gigs and stuff I do, I'll often want to get the last bus home. So if I can borrow an amp from somebody or use backline or something, that's often preferable, because then, as much as I'd love to take my own amp, it's like half the time I can't run it where I want to anyway. And so I end up playing through Fender Hot Rods and stuff like that, probably 90% of the time, which they are what they are. It's not really my thing, but it gets me a clean platform, and then I use a couple of pedals to just shape it how I want.
I've been playing the Friedman stuff since 2015.
Those are so good.
And love them. And they sound, every amp that he makes sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And when you sound the way those amps make you sound, it makes you a better guitar player. It inspires you. It moves you to play a certain way. And it is, I have a digital solution that sometimes I have to travel with,
Yeah.
or do certain types of gigs with. And you know, it's a plug and play, and I run it direct. I run it direct to front of house, and it is what it is. But you miss the experience of playing, you know, through your favorite amplifier, and it does have an effect on the way in which you play the instrument. It just does.
Slight aside, just as soon as you mentioned Friedman, the first time I ever heard a clip, I think it may have been Phil X out at Tone Merchants or something, playing through the BE 100 some years ago. It was a YouTube clip, and he's playing all this. He maybe had a Les Paul and then maybe like a Lux Tone Strat type thing, Charvelli sort of thing. But it was just spectacular. And I mean, Phil sounds
Right.
amazing anyway. But hearing that, I heard that amp and I was like, wow, this Dave Friedman guy really had it figured out. And then so I started to delve into it. I mean, I've gotten to try, I think, a BE100 and a small box, but they're not, you couldn't get one of those amps here, and it would be, it's probably, I don't know, $5 or $6 grand to try to get a hold of one in Canadian dollars. Canadian dollars, that's half of why I don't have a lot of boutique stuff anymore, because it's just, you know, to buy, I don't know, a PRS or a SUR or something is like $6-7 grand. It's a lot of money.
That's insane.
So,
you know, I kid around with Ben Coombs a lot about saying, how much is that in real money? But I can understand. It's got to be real tough to buy American stuff up in Canada.
Yeah. And I've gotten lucky with a lot of, I mean, back when I was playing PRSs a lot, I got lucky because they were kind of out of fashion at that point, and I would get like ones that were older, but you get them for really low prices. I think I traded an American Standard Telly for a Custom 22 once, which was a pretty good trade. But the guy he wasn't into the PRS anymore, and he wanted something a little more vintagey, so we swapped. I had a couple of the Grissom model PRSs that were awesome, the
DGTs are amazing.
That was when I started at college. That was the guitar before I got the gold Les Paul. That was the guitar I was using.
There's a guitar player, my friend Jay. He had a DGT, and he has said forever. He was like, you know, the DGT's got something really interesting.
There's a secret sauce in there, yeah.
There really is, and he's a tone hound. I mean, and he's the guitar player, you know, that's always got the best tone of any player, you know. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's that guy, and he knows everything about his gear, and he can talk to you about it, and he's a great guitar player, and he always sounds great. And that DGT was this. He would say, you know, it's like you can't put your finger on any one thing. It's how all these things work together.
Absolutely. And that guitar taught me a lot too, because again, I had been playing a SUR prior to that. I had a SUR Modern and I had some Les Pauls, and that was like a bridge, a stepping stone, because that's a little more of a vintagey guitar. The pickups are a little more PAF-ish. And I could use it if I was playing a rock gig, if I was playing an R&B gig, if I was doing a gospel gig. I could take that guitar out and get what I needed out of it. Had a vibrato that stayed in tune just fine, really comfortable neck. It was slightly heavier than I might have liked, but that would be my only, and that was just the luck of the draw with the couple that I had, the DGTs.
Right.
That's one thing I look for, is like as light as I can get a guitar. That's probably the big criteria for me when I do buy a guitar. If it's really light, then I'm probably going to be I'm more able to kind of move around with it.
Yeah.
But
what kind of Strat are you holding now?
This is another Danocaster.
Okay.
This is the, you know, not officially or anything, but you know, it looks like a Clapton Blackie kind of a thing. It's got that same V neck. This is a really more of a pronounced V, whereas the Telly is a little more round with some shoulder. This has Arcane pickups in it.
Great stuff.
Really, really good. This is a super powerful for, like, you know, that's like a kind of a Richie Blackmore sounding, really punchy bridge pickup, and it's not very shrill. And the way it's wired from whoever I bought it from is that the tone control works on this, and then the middle pickup's wide open. so you can actually adjust when it's in there, and have the two. But that bridge pickup is all the pickups sound great, but yeah, the chance came up to get this guitar. I've never kept Strats, and this is probably the first one that I held on to, because again, it's, I don't know, 7 pounds. It's really light, ash body, really comfortable. It's funny, I thought about it after a while, because it wasn't really, I would have maybe wanted something in a cooler color, but the videos I used to learn guitar from, the Keith Wyatt ones, Keith had a black maple neck Strat. So that was a real early influence. And actually a buddy of mine, that my dad's buddy Roger, I'd go to visit him, and he always had a black maple neck Strat. So this is like a childhood kind of symbol for me to have a black maple neck Strat. But this is, yeah, just real resonant guitar, stays in tune. I have a lot of fun when I need a Strat, particularly playing like gospel gigs and stuff. This is a go-to favorite.
Very
Amazing.
cool. And
What's
black
your
goes
favorite-
with everything you wear. Black
Yes.
Strat goes with everything you wear.
Absolutely.
Black guitars look great on stage too. What's your favorite pickup position on a Strat?
Probably either the back pickup or the Knopfler. It's funny. I was talking to somebody the other day. I always thought of it backwards, and it turns out I was wrong all these years. I would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I realized everybody else goes the other way. This being 1, this being 2, 3, 4, 5. So
Not everybody.
Oh,
yeah.
you go the other way, right?
I'll go
Right,
the other
Ty?
way.
You go the
Yeah.
other way. So you
Yeah,
think
Ty and
the
I
way-
were having a
you
conversation
think
about that
it
the
the
other
way
day.
that I have thought about it for
Yeah.
years.
Forever.
So, yeah, the Knopfler thing. Because the other thing I do is I'll dump the tone and then have a bit of gain on it. And it's almost like you've got a cocked wah, like Jeff Beck, or
Sure.
even slightly Schenkery, just that sort of really nasally but really beautiful singing sound. But yeah, the two positions where I live most of the time, or 4, the bridge and middle together. I use them all. I don't tend to use neck and middle very much. That's the only one I don't go to very much for some reason. I'm not sure why.
The two position, the Knopfler that you call it, is also the 70s Clapton position.
Yes.
He played in that position all his life in the 70s.
Yeah, that sound to me is just so quintessentially Strat. I mean, all the positions are obviously, even the neck in the middle is that kind of, Hendrixy sort of, or Robert Cray, that kind of a thing.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
or even like a wide open middle pickup. That's I think I saw a clip of JD Simo playing a 56 or something Strat, but he was spending a lot of time just on that middle pickup, and
It's
it was
the best sound.
that clangy blues thing that really works well. But yeah,
Super
the
great.
bridge and middle is probably my go-to, or just the bridge pickup by itself.
Yeah. The bridge and middle, also called the Sweet Home Alabama sound.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Ed King, may he rest in peace.
Yeah, great.
Um,
What a great guitar player.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ed King. Really.
One of my
I
favorites.
don't. Yeah, and like I said, the cool thing about somebody like Ed is that I read on these like the Les Paul forums and stuff, and he would like on some of these places, like he would be a contributor and like talk to people, and like he was really he wasn't secretive about like sharing what he had. He was just into sharing, I think, and as there's a lot of great collectors out there that are willing to do that, and I think that's very cool. But Ed, I think, was
That's what makes the community great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes the community fantastic.
It's yeah. I mean, I've been so lucky, like I say, even with the world of vintage guitars, because I don't have access to them like people maybe certainly in the U.S. just because they're not as many. But like the friends I've had that have been willing to say, "Hey, come over and check out, a 50s Gold Top or a 50s Strat or something like that maybe otherwise I wouldn't have gotten to see." And then in a couple cases, people have lent me stuff for doing YouTube videos. That's how I got a hold of the loan of the Junior back there originally. My buddy was like, "Hey, yeah, you can use this for a video." And then I had to give it back to him. And it, like I said, I don't think I slept for a while after, because it was just like, it was the catalyst to, playing a really good vintage guitar. Because a lot of the vintage stuff you find around here has been monkeyed with a ton. Refinished, broken necks, changed this, changed that.
Same here.
So it's, I'd to get to play you know, I have yet to really ever sit with like, I don't know, a pristine, say, I don't know, 50s telly or something that hasn't been totally monkeyed with, or a 50s uh, most Gibsons. I mean, because there's not as many here, and if they are here, it's like, oh, it's been totally refinished and it's got 2 of 3 pickups rewound, and it's
Or it's
not necessarily,
$70,000
yeah,
for a Fender.
yeah,
It's
exactly.
expensive, yeah.
The other thing for me, particularly with Fenders, is I like the 9.5 radius, the slightly flatter. I can't get on with the 7 1/4 for me, for how I play. So anytime even like a good old Strat or Telly has come up, maybe like a 60s one, late 60s or something like that, they're great guitars, but I find myself not playing the way I prefer to, because
Two
these,
round. Yeah.
yeah, it's too round. And the Danos too actually have a deeper set neck pocket. So I find like these are really slinky, even with 10s on it. It almost plays more like maybe a 9.5 set or something.
A lot of those old rosewood fretboard guitars, say 60, 61, 62, 63, all of those had a deeper set neck, so that the pickups were almost flat to the body. The strings, everything was very close to the body. I've had a few of those, and
Yeah.
they're just, you find that the pickups are, you wouldn't even know that there's a lot, like they're this tall, because they're really,
Yeah.
really thin to the body. So that's a very cool thing. Most of the '50s guitars were up out of the body a bit, but in the '60s they made everything more streamlined.
Yeah, I did get a chance when I was a kid. It's funny you mentioned a really great Strat being a 60. The music store that I was taking lessons in, the boss owned. It was a refin hardtail, but it was a 1960, and it was one of those guitars. And it just rang and was just like, it was the coolest thing. I'd see these vintage guitars in Guitar Player magazine, and then I'd go to the store, and it's like he'd pull the 60 down off the wall and let me play it. I don't think they ever wanted to tell my parents what it was worth, because it was like, even at the time, I don't know, maybe a $10,000 guitar, and it's like, what? Because they were used to buying me guitars for $200 or something.
Right.
But that was a catalyst for me early on. Like when I did get to play cool vintage guitars, I've always had an appreciation for them, even though traditionally I've always mostly from circumstance owned modern stuff.
Mm-hmm. That Strat back there got a 9.5-inch radius, and I did something. I did something a couple of weeks ago, and I've told Dave. I've just raved about it. I've been playing a Strat a lot lately.
Yeah, is that the Tomatillo with the roasted neck? Is that one? I think you showed that on the stream. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I'm stringing it with the Hendrix gauge. Do you know about this?
That's the old Fender Rockin' 10 to 38. Is that?
It's 10 to 38, 10, 13, 15, 26, 32, 38.
That's crazy.
And hey, man, I told Dave, awesome. I was like, I don't know if I'll ever go back on a Strat. It obviously feels different. And, but I
need to try that.
It sounds different. So, plugging into a clean amp. I was plugging into the clean channel of a small box, and I was using the clean channel of the Books and Betty.
Okay.
And I was like, holy smoke, this might be an overlooked element to that whole Hendrixy sound.
I was watching my buddy Zach Childs. He's got the Ask Zach YouTube series, and he recently did a video about the James Burton string gauge. Same kind of idea where it's like a heavier, it might even be a similar gauge, but normally you'd think you'd go, I don't know, 9 to 42, but this was like this gauge that he figured out based on buying a 6-string pack of strings, throwing away the low E, shifting everything up one, and then getting a banjo string for the high E back before, slinkies and stuff existed. But he talked about the same thing. Like, it just, maybe that's an element to some of the sounds of these great old players that were using these different string gauges, almost making up necessity was kind of the mother of invention. Whereas now,
exactly right.
Well, a lot of those players were playing in just regular 9-gauge strings. A lot of those players, Clapton was playing 9s in the, all through his time in Cream in the 70s. He was playing 9-gauge strings. A lot of those guys were.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing, almost the same thing you did, Ty. I just I took the 10s off my black Strat that you saw at the top of the video and just put a 9-gauge set on. And oh my God, what an amazing! It just sounds great. It's very bell-like. It's just easy to play. It's just wonderful, wonderful gauge of strings for that guitar.
I was going to ask you if you would grab that.
Yeah, I didn't have enough stands, but I set this out. This is the token kind of almost 80s vibe guitar. This is not showing up well. This looks white, but it's shell pink. I had this made by my friend Tyson Spinney, who's local here. I get him to do a lot of work on my guitars, but he made me, I commissioned this. It's an ash body. This is actually roasted maple. That's
wow.
just,
That's dark.
it's like really, I wasn't expecting it to be as dark as it is. I thought it was going to look more like kind of that, which those are just regular maple that Dan has aged. But this is the piece of roasted maple that he got. And so the neck is very dense. It actually has pink, I had him put pink inlays in it for
Sweet.
fun. And then the logo's pink. But this is sort of my token. I wanted something kind of like the Dano, but with a humbucker in it. And
Beautiful. I thought that was a rosewood neck.
yeah, people see it, but it is actually, it's roasted maple and it's finished. It's that, gunstock oil and a French polish. So it's really
Nice.
fast, really slick. I think it has 6105s on it. So it's kind of, a hybrid between an old Strat and like a cool early Charvel or something, somewhere
fun.
in the middle.
That's fun. That's very cool.
And
I love the color.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, real quick, thanks for the super chat, Boner Jams. Says great
Yes,
show, guys.
thank you very much.
Great show, guys. Dave, let me know if you find another universe for me. Ty, love the shirt, man. Brings out
Awesome.
your eyes. XOXOXO. X.
Great. That's great. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Boner Jams.
Yes, and I went and watched the show that he and Jay did last week or the week before, and it was great. Congratulations.
Yes, excellent show, guys.
awesome.
Tom is here. Hey, Tom, good to see you.
Hey, Ben Tom.
Hello. So Tyson made these pickups, and the cool thing is there's a push-pull on here for a series parallel as opposed to a coil split, which I've always been a little iffy on the tone of coil splits. For me, it's almost like either have a single or humbucking. But this parallel thing, I can't remember what guitar I tried that originally had that, but I was like, that is cool because you roll it down and it's that Cocteau crazy thing, and it's noiseless.
Could it be your Sir that you had?
Awesome.
Maybe. I'm trying to think. You know what it was? It was a Music Man, a Reflex. You ever see the Music Man?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had one of those for a while, and it had a parallel option.
I did too.
On the humbucking, and I just thought that was cool. I thought it was interesting, so I had Tyson put that in. The other thing interesting, this neck is probably the same size as my 59 Junior. It's not a small. I was like, I wanted it to be a shreddy guitar, but at the same time, it's like, I still want a bigger neck.
Good night, Larry.
Good
Have a
night,
time
Larry.
in the studio.
Cheers. And then just regular tuners on it. But this is the other thing I put on this is it's got the Highwood saddles on it. I don't know if you guys have seen those before, but they're trying to get it. You can see maybe the top is like rounded over.
Yeah.
So the screws they can't stick up no matter how high you set the saddles.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Every time I get a Strat, I buy 4 sets of the outer saddle screws because they're the shorter ones.
Yeah.
And I use them for the middle so you don't feel them. You don't get your hands scraped up at all.
Yeah, because this has a Godot. It's like kind of, I must have been influenced by Matias Asado when I had this made. The pink Strat with the Godot bridge. So it's kind of Sir-like in that way, but I wanted the bent saddles just because I like that look. I like that feel. But the original ones, the screws would just like cut your hand.
Yeah, they cut your hands.
And
Absolutely.
I was like, I could have sat there and filed on them, but unfortunately, I don't possess great patience in working on guitars. So I was like, I'm just going to put the Highwoods on there. I wanted to try them anyway. And
Cool.
they're very useful. I haven't had any problems with them. The Black Strat, somebody, maybe Dan or a previous owner, may have beveled them down because they're not particularly sharp and they're just stock. I don't know what bridge it is. It might be a Callahan or a Godot or something. but it's just
Nice.
vintage. That's a vintage trim, and then this is the vibrato, and then that's a 2.1.
Very
Very cool.
cool. So do you use that guitar a lot?
I do for certain things. It's like I say, for a while there's not many gigs, but I would play with gospel artists sometimes, and the artists that I work with, they like it's trad gospel, but they like a kind of a fiery guitar player, so they're always pointing at me to take solos and stuff like that. So this guitar I use when I get a call to do something that's a little more rocky, where I'm going to be taking solos and maybe need to use a bar a little more. So it's not my daily driver by any means, but if I need something that'll flutter, I can get that out of this. And again, if I want a back humbucking and I don't want to play a Gibson, this is kind of what that guitar does for me.
That's fun.
Very cool.
And yeah, I've always liked Elvis and his pink Cadillac, so that's why I wanted the color.
You're a man. Only a real man can play a pink guitar, and I understand.
I years
I
ago.
love pink guitars. Love
Me
them.
too. I love them too.
I had
Shell pink, one of my favorite colors.
Shell pink's amazing.
I had an 87 or 88 Les Paul Custom thin body, but it was called Sunset Metallic. It was a Les Paul Custom Light. The
Yeah.
body was thin, and it was like a pink color.
People love those guitars.
I should have kept it. I
yep,
traded
you
it for the
should've.
guitar, the Tom Anderson with a bender in it, actually, but I should have kept the Les Paul.
That's still a good trade.
It was good, yeah. I've always liked. I mean, when I was a kid, I had a Yamaha RGX that I had painted bright yellow, like more yellow even than my pants probably. I've always just like big loud colors like that. I'm product of the '80s in that way. Part of me will never die.
I understand.
Just
my hat.
Yes. But the pink guitars, or I've had a Charvel once that was slime green. That was a cool finish.
Yes.
And then the bright yellow stuff and whatever else has come along. So many guitars.
I want to thank Denise Parrott for the super sticker of Canadian $27.99. Thank you so much.
Oh wow!
Very much.
Wow, Denise, thank you. Thanks, you, Denise, very much. Thank you very much.
It's cool.
And it's a pleasure to have you join us tonight, Denise.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is incredible because normally it's about 11 o'clock here, and I'm always still up. But usually my parents are probably getting ready to wind down by this time of the evening. So it's very flattering that they're tuned in and watching, or at least mom.
Well, you talked early in our time together. Just how supportive your parents have been throughout throughout life, and then and certainly have been encouraging in your profession. So I think that's important, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I'm still here. Obviously, I'm in the basement room, and but this house at one time was much smaller, and when it became clear that I was not going to give up this guitar thing after a handful of years, we needed a bigger room. I had guitars and I had magazines. There was no room for a bed. I had to put a loft bed in, so I had more floor space for the guitars. And so they put this section onto the house, and I've got a drum kit over, you can't see there, and some PA stuff. It's set up a little more loungy right now because I'm not hosting any rehearsals currently. But bands have been in and out of here rehearsing. It hits 100 dB pretty quick once the drums are going. But other than that, it's a fantastic sounding little room, and I can do what I need to do here and play guitar. Can't really see, but I normally have all the guitars lined up on the walls and over there where the flag is. So they're always out. I can just grab them and play. And amps you can kind of see. There's my Deluxe and a couple other Fenders hiding.
Nice. Very nice.
And then I've got my little pedal board and the little tiny Vox that I use for my videos is running into the interface, and it's just right there.
I want to say a quick hello to Amanda Coombs for
Hey,
thank you for
Amanda.
coming in. Sorry that you got to come in late, but appreciate you showing up.
Yeah, welcome. Good to see you. Will, what is it about the Gibsons that have your attention right now? I mean, what is it?
Maybe the short scale, that could be part of it. Again, that they play a little easier. I don't know per se. I think some of it is just. I mean, I've been playing the junior. Prior to that, I was really mostly. Generally, I mostly play the Danos. I have the other Gibsons. I keep pointing there, but it's these. Uh, but yeah, I just the Telly has always been the go-to on the Strat, but there's something about Gibsons to me. I don't know if it just comes from the fact that when I was a little kid, it's like the one thing I really wanted to have was a Gibson guitar. And then I finally saved up my money after playing for 12 years or something. And my first good guitar was actually a Parker Fly, but that's another long story. But the first good guitar that I saved up for and bought, I bought a nice Flametop Les Paul. And that feeling has never left me. As far as you see a Gibson guitar, it's like those were always so high up on the rack, you couldn't even play them in the music store here. And so when I was finally able to do that, it was cool. It was like a rite of passage or something. So maybe Gibson's always represented that kind of a thing to me. And they just have a certain sound, a certain feel. And a lot of the artists that I like, the music I listen to, play a lot of Gibsons.
Mm-hmm.
No, I hear you. I mean, when I got my first Gibson, I'm a little older than you. I'm not going to tell you exactly how much, but Dave and I talk about this all the time. I mean, there was a decade there where we could just almost buy any Gibson we wanted, Dave. Right? I mean,
That's right.
they were not moving. It was a great time to buy some Gibsons in the '80s, in the late '80s.
Yeah.
And
I've heard stories of it was like before Slash, you could buy Les Pauls for not all that much money because everybody wanted Kramers and Charvels,
yeah,
Ibanez.
that's exactly right.
And
You're
even
exactly
like,
right, yeah.
I've talked to pals of mine even here, and it was like, yeah, everybody was playing either a Kramer or a Charvel. Ibanez came in a little later. I think we were you would see guitars for sale here in like 91 that were probably huge in 1989 just because of the nature of things were slow to get here. And so everybody had to have something, pointy and loud colors and stuff. So, to have a Les Paul was almost like this old fashioned thing. And then Slash and Izzy came along from GNR, and Sykes and Randy and Tracy Guns and all these guys that were kind of back to form playing Les Pauls or SGs,
Mm-hmm.
Gibson double necks, Flying Vs. They're cool. They're timeless.
Yeah, Brian Spalding says, this guy, Will Hansen, is awesome. Great stories, gear, and playing. Love his thinking and approach to music.
That's very
He's
cool.
also a
Thank
good
you.
buddy.
Yeah, that community element is cool.
Well, Brian posted in the chat that he's got a Thin Lizzy tribute band. So as soon as we're not off the air, I can't wait to go check out his Thin Lizzy tribute band.
What's the name of that act? Did he write it down?
If Brian, if you wrote the name of the band down,
I'd be curious to hear that too.
Yeah, can you
I think
you
all
write
of
it?
us would.
I love Thin Lizzy, man.
Oh man, Live and Dangerous. Black Rose though is probably, I may have mentioned before, that to me is when I heard Black Rose, the piece itself, I was knocked out because I don't even really think I'd heard much of Gary Moore at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this. And there's some brilliant, you can tell, I mean, Phil is having a bit of a tough time with the lifestyle and everything, but some of those songs, Waiting for an Alibi and
Waiting for an Alibi, good Lord.
It's so great. And Got to Give It Up. I mean, you can hear him just, he's struggling a little bit, but he's still giving it 150%. And it's so passionate and powerful. I think Bad Reputation I always like too, like Open Trail and
The fact that you're the age you are and you're just blurting out these song titles from these older chaps, it's amazing. I'm so happy that the generation after us is using their head.
we still love guitar and great music. Well, the thing is for me is I was very old school in like, and I may have mentioned this off air at other points, but like I still had, not entirely, but vinyl records. I didn't have the internet till I was a teenager as far as at home. So I was very slowing down records, slowing down CDs to learn to play guitar, reading magazines, getting information. I didn't have YouTube tutorials. I didn't have any of that. I had a lot of old school approaches despite my age that I am. And I really credit a lot of that to having shaped where I'm at now, because it taught me a lot of practical, like using my ears, using my head, extrapolating from the information I'm given rather than certain things where, like, to try to learn guitar now, you know, it takes a long time to do it and to be really good at it. It's not something that you're going to pick up one day and be really good in, you know, 3 weeks time after you complete a course or something. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You have to be able to be willing to put the time in, and that just comes from loving it.
Amen.
There's no forcing it. You're either going to be into it or not. And I think a lot of kids, it's a shame because it's like, you know, we don't really have, there's so many great players, but there's no, because everything's split off so much. It's like Hendrix was huge and there wasn't a whole lot of other guitar players unless you lived in a particular area. But now it's like with global awareness and the internet, it's just, we're all aware of everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And so it can be a bit disconcerting. Maybe a kid can't as easily find their musical hero because there's so many choices. Whereas in the past,
you ain't kidding. You ain't kidding.
in the past, it was you went and you bought a Hendrix record or a Clapton record or Van Halen or Jeff Beck, and then you had to figure out how to do that on your own.
Mm-hmm.
It's just
good night, Tony.
Yeah.
Good night, Tony. Enjoy the telly.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, the rambling aside, I guess I've always kind of had that old school mentality in how I process things and what I'm into. I like some modern stuff, but it was never, I was always listening to stuff that was older than what I was.
Mm-hmm.
Whether through exposure or whether through interest.
That's cool. Hey, if you're looking for a kill switch for your EVH Wolfgang or your Super Strat, or you might be looking for a set of DiMarzio pickups, or maybe a Keeley pedal or a Voodoo Labs pedal, check out my friend Rob at Tessie Switch. He's got all that stuff. And I have a coupon code for 15% off. It's Nez Says 15. Check that out. If you're looking to buy it, you can get 15% off. Just type in Nez Says 15 at Tessie Switch.
Great stuff on his site. Great stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, Will, the interesting takeaway from that you mentioned, I mean, you're mentioning guitar players that have very distinctive voices on the instrument, right?
Absolutely.
And it made it extremely interesting. I mean, Hendrix changed all of this, and we were all wondering how he was doing what he was doing with chord embellishments. And I mean, he really chased chords in a completely different way, right? I mean,
yeah,
it had that R&B influence behind it. It was fantastic. And then you get to Jeff Beck, and you're like, how is he making those sounds? And then you had all this aggression from Clapton, and then you got all these perfect bends from Gilmour, and then Eddie Van Halen came along, and it was game over.
Schenker.
Oh, Schenker! I mean, yeah, another one. I mean, just
that was another. The Michael Schenker was another, like that Jason Becker record. Dad bought a Michael Schenker Greatest Hits for like $1. And what a fortuitous event, because it had Armed and Ready on it. It had Into the Arena was on there. It had Desert Song, Samurai, Captain Nemo. And I got to hear Michael Schenker. I mean, I had a Flying V for a while as a kid, an old Tokai, and I probably had it because I liked Michael Schenker.
Sure.
I wanted to even paint it like his, but I never got around to it.
You had to play that one standing up.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's funny. Actually, that Latin band, Los Primos, there's footage or a picture somewhere. I played the Jazz Fest, and I had leather pants and a Flying V and a hat. I was a rocker through and through, but I was playing at the Jazz Festival with my bright red Flying V.
You've got to post that online.
The pictures around somewhere. I will try to find it. There's some pretty humorous pictures of me from that time period, which I've shared some in the past, but I need to dig through the archives and find them.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. Leather pants and a Flying V at a Latin jazz event.
Yeah, and playing every Yngwie Malmsteen lick that I kind of sort of knew.
That's awesome.
Point and say take a solo. It's funny because they would always say play like Santana, That's who the director really liked. That was his frame of reference. Obviously, Carlos is really the sort of master of that blend of Latin music and the electric guitar in sort of North American culture. But for me, I was young and I wanted loud rock and roll. So for me, it was like, I'm gonna go back and listen to Far Beyond the Sun instead. But a lot of those same things applied, the harmonic minor scales, and I didn't even know what they were called until people explained them to me. But I just knew that I liked how they sounded, especially with more reverb.
So you were finding ways to wedge in the harmonic minor scale into the.
Yeah, and it kind of worked. But just again, it was that exploration, finding players and trying to get the sounds and figure out. Like I remember when I was listening to Van Halen, and I realized after a while that he tunes the high strings a little bit flat, and I was just like, I didn't have anybody to tell me that. It just came from listening to the records over and over and over again, and I'm like, when he plays an open E chord, how does it sound so fat? And part of it.
Well, actually, that's not quite the truth. What happened was with that old guitar, when he first put the Floyd Rose on there, he put the posts in the wrong spot, so it would never
really?
intonate. It would never intonate. It would intonate flat.
Huh.
So that's why the higher strings were always a little bit flat. But he's so strong, he grabs those strings so hard that it would pull them back into tune.
Yeah.
Because of his monstrous hands and just the way he played. So it was good for him.
Yeah.
Luckily for him that he put those. But back in '87, when Tom Anderson put a new neck on it, he also fixed those posts and put them in a spot where they could re-intonate.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know that. But again, just from like the ear perspective, it was like, if I tune these strings a little bit flat, it sounds a little closer to how those chords are just ringing out in a cool way. So it was finding out little tricks like that just through listening to the records and being really into it, that I would pick up things that I would kind of steal from my own musical lexicon, so to speak.
Yeah, that's awesome. Everyone in the chat.
Ben is posting. Ben's posting links to for everyone to sub to you. Will, thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And everybody in the chat, if you have any more questions for Will, or if you want to see any more gear, please ask. Also, please, if you like what you're seeing, if you like these shows, please hit the thumb and leave a comment down below. We'll answer them. Good or bad, we'll answer. We'll answer everything. Hopefully they're all good, but if they're bad, we'll still answer the question, and we appreciate your comments. And subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the show. Just click subscribe, and you'll get all the notifications for when we're on.
I'm going to do this. Dwight Bailey said I just subbed to Will. So did Amanda.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Will, you've got to check out. I've done this before, and I hope he's okay with it. You've got to go check out some videos that Dwight makes. Dwight Bailey. He posts them on his. I usually see him on Facebook. He may post them in other social media channels as well. This man plays with so much rock and roll attitude. I just love it. I love watching his videos. I watch them several times. They're inspiring because he's a passionate guy. He writes. He writes these songs. He's got all this attitude. I love it.
I've written it down. I'm gonna go and go off on a rabbit hole. And
he's got a YouTube channel as well. He says, "Yeah,
yeah." I'll put it in the rotation. That's awesome.
Thank you, Thomas Santiago. Thank you for the $10 super sticker. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone that's watched us. Thank you to everyone that's given a super chat. Really appreciate it. These super chats that you give us help us keep the show going. It's not money that we put in our pockets. We actually put it towards StreamYard and everything we need to do this show. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Yeah.
As we wind down the show, if anyone has any last things they want to say for the week, please let us know. We're reading the chat here, so I want to say thanks to Will What a great pleasure it was to have you on here tonight.
Thank you so much. Likewise.
We definitely will have you on again.
For sure. Yeah. Just say when. It's funny. This is a weird one for me because normally I'm in the chat typing and watching and stuff. And now this is like the first show where I just like, my screen hasn't left the StreamYard service.
David Hansen has asked if we can talk a little bit about Jeff Beck.
That's
And
my father.
I love talk. Oh, is that your dad?
That's my father. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
So, okay, since Dad's here. So the first, well, I guess it was a CD, but when I was a little kid, Dad every Christmas would buy a CD for me. And the first one I think I ever got was Live at the Regal, B.B. King. But the first one that I got that really just knocked me out was Truth.
Oh,
Completely not. That was the first I heard of Jeff Beck, and I was mesmerized. I mean, like, that is just, to this day, one of my favorite records. It's
well, if you're going to have one Jeff Beck record, that's the one to have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, so Jeff Beck was somebody, again, I'm hearing melodies. I'm hearing like a singer or something. And Jeff Beck is one of those guys. It's like him and Derek Trucks and a handful of others that really are singing on their instrument by way of their expressiveness, be it, slide or vibrato playing with the bar or whatever. But I've heard Jeff play a Strat or Les Paul or Telly, and it's just so uniquely him. And he doesn't, I don't know how to really put it other than that he's
just like an alien.
Yeah. And
no matter what guitar, what instrument he plays, it's top notch.
I mean, he seems like the kind of guy who could pick up, you'll see him almost like bend guitars into tune. And I find myself doing that a lot because it's just, he understands how to get the emotional reaction. And for me, like, whether it was his latest record or whether it was his first one, there's no, he will not bow to any kind of commercial pressure. He just plays what he wants. He works with who he wants. And when he gets tired of playing guitar, he'll go work on his hot rods. And it's just, makes no apologies for who he is. And that, I think, factors in to why his playing is so individualistic and just not single-minded, but very, very focused. Because he knows what he wants and he knows how to make it happen. And Absolutely. He collaborates with great people. I've seen him live twice. In 2009, we saw him with the same band that did the Ronnie Scott's gig. So it was Tal and Vinny and Jason. And then
what a band that was.
He didn't say, we were in Quebec, a French-speaking province, and the only thing he said during the entire show was, it came up and he goes, merci, at the end. That's the only thing he said. And I think at that show, he pulled a Les Paul and did How High the Moon. I think they had Imogen Heap maybe like recorded her backing vocals or something. I don't think she was on the show, but like they did that, and they would do A Day in the Life, and they would do all these great songs. He has a knack for picking songs that have great melodies. I mean, something like Over the Rainbow is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time. Classic melody. And when Jeff plays it, he plays it on the guitar, but it doesn't diminish the fact that it's a beautiful song. It doesn't take away from it or try to be more than anything, but a piece of reverence towards great music. Or Hallelujah. That Emotion and Commotion record is probably
amazing.
One of my favorites. I like the recent stuff he did too with Rosie Bones. Loud Hailer, I think, was his most recent one. He put out some very interesting records over the years, but it's always, no matter if it's that sort of techno-y type stuff that he does or the more traditional, almost lush things with strings, it's like it always just sounds like Jeff. And that's the one takeaway for me above all is I when I hear Jeff, it sounds like Jeff, and that's what I strive to. I spent years trying to sound just like Jeff Beck, and then I realized the goal should be to just sound like me.
And
that is gold right there. Gold.
He was the
love your influences. Be yourself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
that's
it. And it's just so that was the huge takeaway. But again, getting that record when I was 7 or 8, I mean, talk about great parenting.
No kidding.
To get these records. Because Dad, he would buy these records sometimes not even really knowing. He would just read an article and it would be like, I have a hunch Will might take something from this, even if he'd never listened to it. The BB King record was probably the same thing, live at the Regal. I listened to that the other week for the first time in a while. I was staining our deck, and I put on Live at the Regal, and I put on an old Gatemoth Brown record, and it was just like, it was perfect.
Will, that is so. I mean, that is so cool that you're listening to that type of music. I mean, you are a young man. I mean, that you have a connection with that type of music is very, very cool and inspiring.
Yeah, well, I try to be. Well, the older I get, it's like, and like I say, you have to. I think it was Brian May who said, you have to learn to talk by imitating your parents, and playing guitar is very much the way you have to learn to imitate influences to start. But after a while, I mean, and you do whatever makes you comfortable. But I think if you really want to get to that next level, it's like you say, is love your influences, but be yourself. And it takes, what has helped me is being diverse in my listening and having the ability to listen to stuff that's just really musical. Stuff that really, whether it was played on a guitar or not, speaks to me. Could be a great piano piece or great horn arrangement or choral music I love. I listen to a lot of classical music that has no guitar in it, but I can take things from it because it's just beautiful.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Ben Coombs. Ben Coombs has posted Ben Coombs has a signature pedal.
I was just gonna say it.
I mean, which is amazing, right? I mean, Ben's got some signature pickups, and he's had a signature guitar that's absolutely gorgeous. And now he has a signature pedal. He has posted a demo, and you should hop over to Ben's channel. Check
right
that
after
out.
us. Right after this show.
And of course after and buy one if you dig it. Ben has a great channel. He has a live shows that are fantastic. Ben is constantly looking to post a compelling and interesting content on his channel, and he's an inspiring guy. He's got the best sign off on YouTube. He's a nice human being.
Yes.
And so if you haven't subscribed to Ben's channel, do yourself a favor and do that. His videos will just make your day better.
And if you want to know what his pedal is called, it's called the Nice Drive, eh? Exactly. That's it. That's no joke. It's called the Nice Drive, eh?
As a fellow Canuck, I appreciate it.
LPD Pedals. It's LPD Pedals. So check that out.
Is that a Canadian company, Dave?
I believe it is. It is. Well, let's ask Ben. Ben, is that a Canadian company? A? Well, while we wait. Anyway, I think we're going to wind this down. Todd, do you have any more things to ask Will?
Tons. That's why we're going to have Will back.
Yeah, we'll have him on for part 2.
I'd be happy to do it. I really appreciate you guys for having me on, and also just the community spirit with your show. You have people on from all walks of musical life, and what brings us together is just the love of playing more guitar and being into the gear and just sharing. I think that's such a positive way forward, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing to help facilitate that.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, and thanks for the kind words.
It's such a journey.
I'm sorry?
Yeah. Go ahead, Dave.
That company's from Arizona, by the way. LPD Pedals from Arizona.
Cool.
Yeah, it's such a journey, and all of us have a different type of journey. But the thing that we have in common is that is sitting in your lap. And there's never an opportunity where we can't learn from one another. And that's the whole reason Dave and I carve out Thursday nights to be here and find like-minded people such as yourself to come in and share a part of you with the community. And we can't thank you enough for agreeing to do that.
It's all very, very cool. And that's the great thing about, because when I was a kid, like I say, I had access to the internet. I'd go to the library or whatever, but I didn't have the community. I had, my guitar teachers or people that would hang out at the music store, but it was and it was quite divided too, because I was so young. But now it's like I'm older, and it's like I've made some of the best friends I'll ever have in the community from things like this. Mm-hmm. Even if we've never actually met face to face because there's a country between us or several, it's you know, it's just this thing has taken me places that I may have never thought I'd go, but I'm happy now that I've been there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The guitar and the internet, you know,
It's a good combination.
Without either of those, I would never have met Ty. I would have never had a show. I would have never met the people that that sent me this way. I have a lot of friends, more friends out of the internet than I do in my personal life. It's amazing. It's just amazing, and how quickly you say you become friends when you don't even really know each other, but you just you just trust each other at their word.
It's like you don't know them, but after a while you do. And
you do know. Yes, absolutely.
Like
absolutely.
Maybe you've never met face to face, but it's like I know you guys now and consider you friends, but we've only ever done this.
Right.
You know?
And I feel as though I've grown up with Ty.
That's awesome.
We have a very parallel life in guitars, Ty
That's
and
awesome.
I. And I think a lot of us have a very parallel life.
Yep.
And that's part of the reason
And you find that out, and that bonds you together even more. It's so cool.
Yeah, and we're just so thankful that so many of you decide to carve out some time in your week to be with us live, and for all of you, and for all those that are watching us in replay, because something may come up on a Thursday night where you can't join us, and it's everybody that I'm seeing in this: Thomas Santiago and Quentin James and Hugh Caldwell. Hugh has been a huge contributor in the chat tonight, and Amanda's here, and Ben is always so faithful, and Dwight and Tom and everybody, all of you guys here. We appreciate you being here every week.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's pretty cool from my perspective. You know, most weeks I'm able to tune in, and I always see it's the same names in the chat.
Yeah.
And it's just like,
It's nice to know that we have friends that like to watch us and just hang out with us, which is really cool.
Well, that's what it is. It feels like, you know, we're sitting in a living room. We could be having this conversation if we were in the same room, and it would be the same conversation. But here we are, you know, I'm a country away from you guys, and we can still do the thing. So it's
and
very cool.
An hour later than us. So Tubin in one says hello from Nova Scotia. And he's a good friend of ours too. Tubin in one has watched me personally from the Johnny Bean days, and now he's come over to this show. So thank you so much.
Cool. And a fellow Nova Scotian. That's fantastic.
That's cool.
So he's from where I'm at.
Awesome. All right, guys. So I'm gonna say goodnight. Check me out. I know I missed this past Sunday on my rig rundown. I apologize. I just couldn't carve out enough time in that day to do one. But check me out this Sunday. I'm not sure what time it'll be, but it'll be before Ben's show. He does a show at 8 p.m., so I'll probably do mine 5 or 6 p.m., somewhere around there. Will, thank you again. Ty, awesome as always. Both of you stick around while we can say goodbye off camera. I'm going to say goodbye to everyone here. And we will see you. I'll see you on Sunday, and we will see you next Thursday. Ty, do you know who we have next Thursday as a guest?
I do. It's our EVH maestro, Mr. Rob Johnson.
Awesome.
Oh,
Rob
cool.
Johnson next Thursday night. Check it out. It's going to be fun. So long, everyone. We will see you soon. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Good night, everyone.